You don't coach barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, technology. You coach human beings. You need to give the athletes what they need, not what you can prove, not this big, crazy, fancy program. Use it for the athletes that need it. If you give them the adaptation that they don't need too soon, you're robbing them twice.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Justin Lima, I got a lot of things I want to discuss with you today. Real quick, I'm just going to put out like a real fast bio. 17 years in the strength and conditioning industry, like closer to probably 20 decades. Athlete, coach, position coach and strength coach.
Yeah.
President and CEO of the Strength Coach Network. So that's kind of like condensing it all down. We'll go through your origin story. We're going to expand on that a little bit more. But what I wanted to jump off with, for the algorithm, you got to have the fast topic, right? So I'm like scooting as fast as I can. This is a big question, and we'll expand on it as we kind of go through. What do you think the next generation of coaches need to understand about strength?
You're coaching a person, not anything else. You don't coach barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, technology. You coach human beings, and they're missing that piece.
You see that now?
Yes.
More so than in the past?
Yes, because people don't talk about it as much, and because it's harder work. Like it's harder to connect with an athlete, talk with a person than to say, oh, this piece of data says this, or, oh, that 45-pound dumbbell. Like, yes. And I don't think people are talking about it as much, which is why I'm going to continue to talk about it. And I mean, let's even call it what it is. When I first heard that, it was 2012 when I worked for Coach Doyle. And he's like, let's get this straight. We're in the business of changing lives and working with human beings. And our vehicle is strength and conditioning. We don't coach barbells. We don't coach dumbbells. We coach people. And that resonated with me because my offensive line coach, the guy that got me into coaching, he cared about me. I had a relationship with him. And I'd run through a brick wall for that guy because of who he was. The program that he gave me was vanilla as heck, but it worked because I was a novice athlete. That's what I needed. And so to those strength coaches, they need to hear, you work with people, connect with the person. There's a reason that everybody, and it's a cliche of they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That needs to be first and foremost, especially today. Like you said, algorithm, I'm doing everything to create this fake facade. Coach the person.
This is interesting to me though, because I'm kind of pushing your origin story down the path here. Because when you're dealing with a division, any college strength coach for that matter, the way that you get in it is either you intern and get straight in. Very few people are going to be hired from the private sector and move into it. It's you move from college as an intern or an athlete as an intern straight into that life, right? And it's a different life, as we'll discuss. And that hasn't changed, that path, it hasn't changed really in the past 30 years now. Technology, all these things have changed. But what you just said was really interesting for me to hear because the whole environment is based around being around people and coaching those people. And so I'm trying to figure out what was the catalyst to be able to make this become more of an issue now than it was 2 decades ago.
I would say it's like anything else. It's like erosion. It happens slowly at first and you don't realize it, how people get overweight or how they get strong. It's the slow marginal gains that they don't even realize and it slowly erodes at it. But like nowadays in this world of strength and conditioning, HRV was popular for a while. Right. And the pendulum swung so far where it's like, oh, well, you had a low HRV today, Dave. We need to make sure that you have nothing but lilacs.
Yeah.
And you're just going to call everything needs to be calm. And it's like, well, let's pump the brakes for a second. This athlete had a massive training day yesterday. Like they should have some of these red, low, and that's what we did a really good job with at the University of Iowa. It was, hey, we had this information. We had a company called iThlete back in the day, and the kids would they'd put a finger sensor or a heart rate monitor, and we would talk with them. And whether it was good or bad, it was a starting point for a conversation. Hey, your numbers were a little bit low today. And we started to let me back up. We have to be okay with being just in data collection mode at first.
Yes.
So let's collect the data. Let's see what it says. Okay, let's not overreact. Like so-and-so is low. Okay, cool. Not a big deal. Let's look at weekly trends. And then, hey, you're a little bit lower right now. What have you been doing? Oh, you know what? Have this test. I'm worried about this. Hey, we're playing Ohio State. Like I stayed up late studying extra film. Okay, cool. Now we have a conversation. We're not changing our lift because the Omega Wave said so. Like, no, we're still coaches. We're still connecting to the people. And it's like, okay, well, you're stressed out about that. Hey, here are some strategies to help you handle that. Why don't you journal before you go to bed? Why don't you sleepy time tea? Any of the different interventions that people care about, use that and have a conversation and be with your athletes that way. And that has now perpetuated where it's like, oh, you come in and maybe you have a Oura ring, a Whoop, a sleep tracker. Oh, you didn't sleep well. Let's get you jump. And it's like Michael Jordan would never have been able to have his basketball game that he did. How many days have you or any of the athletes lifting here come in and been like, shoot, I don't feel that great, but let me just kind of, Jocko, let's go through the motions, right? Let's see how I feel. And holy cow, you know what? I actually feel great today. I set a PR when I didn't feel like I was that good. And we've lost that. We've ripped that away by everything has to be optimal. Nothing about lifting the last guest that I heard on the podcast, 1,100 pound bench and a squat. There's nothing natural or optimal about that. Yeah. You got to push through the discomfort. And we've removed that for athletes and society as a whole when we're just trying to make everything perfect.
If I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, and it's as soon as you said the HRV, the bell went off in my head, is 20, 30 years ago, you're going to watch the athletes come in the room and everybody's got their baseline, how they're talking, how they're moving. And so you see something off. Non-verbally, they're not as they're normally supposed to be. And then you see that, then you have to have your intervention, or what do you have to do to bring that athlete back to baseline, or if they're above, down to their normal baseline. And that nonverbal and verbal communication has got replaced with, before they come in, you're looking at all their metrics. Here's their GPS data, here's the heart rate data. So you're looking at all that and you're making an opinion before you even see that person come in. That's the shit.
It doesn't have to be, it's this false dichotomy that the world has already created with all many of these other things. It's not like, can you coach without the data? 100%. And if you had to do one or not, like you need to go back to coaching the athlete. And if you want to know if athletes are recovered, how chatty's the room? Are they joking around? Are they then guess what? It might've been a high day on the GPS and you might've pushed them really hard, but they're feeling okay. If you come in the room and it is like you're at a funeral, they're exhausted, you can see it on everybody's face. It is your job to intervene and serve those athletes. We are hired as team sport strength coaches to serve the athletes. We walk a really fine, awkward line because we're serving sport coaches and we're serving athletes and we're serving the administrators on that coach side. But I think COVID taught us a lot of things. Without the athletes, coaches can't coach. Athletes can play without coaching. Now, can they reach the same level of success? Probably not.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm laughing,
right?
but
you're fine.
It's obvious, right?
But like that, what else is obvious? Like a lot of other things are pretty obvious. And it's like athletes can play without a coach. I can be a business owner. I can be a up and coming intern strength coach without a mentor. Am I as good without one? No. But can I do it? Yes. And the pendulum has swung too far where that's why, like specifically on our podcast, I've been very strategic, and I wasn't before I heard somebody, a friend, a mentor, Mike Wadango, on his podcast. He had a couple of his athletes that he's worked with before, Jason and Devin McCourty, Kevin Love, come on the podcast. And he's like, I think coaches need to hear from athletes because they need to hear about the perspective of the people that they're training. And so like we've had that pendulum swing too far. I've now started having more and more athletes on the show so strength coaches can hear from them as well, because connect with the person. Yes, have a little bit of the data, have a little bit of information. Hey, okay, Dave had a really big day yesterday. Dave played offensive line, and they had a lot of collisions. It was a Wednesday practice. That's our high contact day before we play on Saturday. So we're doing short yardage stuff. I know he's going to be physically beat up. Wednesday's our lower body day. Oh, but you know what? Dave's coming in and Dave's busting, his friend's balls and they're having a good time. Oh, guess he's not that tired. Hey, Dave, how's life? and you start having that conversation, and that's where you know, the soft skills or whatever people have called it, but you start having that, and you have that ammunition of, I know what the GPS says, the black box of a airplane flight. I know what it says, but what do you say? What do you feel? Because perception drives reality.
Well, this is interesting because if we're to stay in the weeds on this, Mike works in the private sector, and you were at Iowa for what, a decade or something like that?
I was there for 5.5 years.
5.5 years.
Yep.
So now if somebody comes in Iowa, that culture is going to grab them, right? I don't want to say their personality is going to change, but it does, right? It's going to form into the culture that they're trying to develop those kids into, which is different communication than if you're working in a private. So you get what I'm saying?
100%.
Like somebody that's been in the military for a year is going to communicate with you especially with supervisors there, differently than they're going to communicate with you if there's no one else around in that private sector, which becomes a different type of communication skill, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today is the private sector and the public sector, and these things, you know, like that it's the same, but it's really different.
Well, because in the private sector, like this, I had a friend of mine who works in the private setting. He used to own a gym down in Louisiana, and now he works for Team Builder OS, which is their their office manager, their suite stuff for private sector gyms. And he was talking about his experience, and you know, I have it happen now where certain athletes, if I'm working in the private setting, they could care less. And they're just kind of there, and it's like either mom or dad want them to be here, and they're here because of that, or they kind of want to say that they were here. And it's like, I can't care more than you about this. Like, you're literally paying us to be here, whether you try or not, whether you show up or not. But when you're doing it in the team setting, especially college P4 football now, where our success is decided on whether or not we win or lose games, which is why, like, when we were shooting some of the content beforehand, and I'm talking about the role of a strength coach, is we're supposed to reduce the likelihood of injury. And I know some people, there are certain words that are semantics in strength conditioning. There's no such thing as injury prevention. Don't play the sport if you don't want to be injured. We have to remember the fact that we're trying to reduce the likelihood of injury, and that then helps those athletes play on the field. They can practice the sport. Hopefully they can play the game and they can win. Because if you don't win in team sport, you're out. And that's okay. There are two worlds in strength conditioning. You're a stock. If we win, we get money. If we lose, we get fired. Or you're a bond. I work in mid-major with the Olympic sports. I work with 4 or 5 coaches. If they get fired, it doesn't affect me. I'm just here. I'm essentially a professor, and I have a cool classroom. But you have to know which one it is, because when you're in that high pressure billion-dollar industry, like Michigan basketball just won that game, and how that's going to change the trajectory of that program, or you see what Indiana just did with their football team, how that changes the trajectory of everything. It's okay. Penn State football just came out with something. Sorry for that, anybody here in Ohio listening to that. But like they had, and other sports showed it too, even with UNC football. When basketball and football earn money, everybody else can play and swim in the pond. And that's okay. And you have to understand, if we're going to make that kind of money, how are we having that kind of money? People want to come. So that means we're generating money by people coming in, advertising dollars. People are watching it on TV. We're the product. We have to be good at what we do. That's a heck of a lot different than, hey, I train this athlete in his off season and he comes to me. I'm working in Iowa. He's in his off season. Now that whole NFL schedule is set up to be failed. And unless the CBA has updated, I read the 400-page document. And if an athlete gets hurt training when they're not at the team facility, now that's part of the reason why athletes don't train as hard, because if they get hurt not at the facility, that's a non-football injury. So they don't get the same amount of guaranteed money if they don't have a guaranteed contract. So now if I get hurt training here and I'm not with my team, if I play for the Minnesota Vikings, well, yeah, I might push back against you, Dave. I don't want to do that really dangerous thing that might hurt me and I might lose my paycheck. So like a bigger global change needs to happen. But when you're working in that private setting and you're just there to serve that client, yeah, you're not going to push them as hard as like, no, y'all, when I'm at Iowa, we have to get you ready for when you're at Kinnick. It's 3rd and whatever, the 72,000 screaming fans, Back in Black is on, or Hell's Bells on, and we got to go make a stop. And that's how we wound up beating Michigan when they're ranked number 2 in the country. Or we do all the things that we had been known for because we had to teach you and create that pressure environment. We couldn't come in and cater to you.
So to get to your origin story, just to provide a little bit more context for people, your path was a little bit different than most. The criminal justice degree really didn't work out for you. But you played college ball, right? And then from there, your first introduction, I was trying to figure out where your first introduction to the passion of the weight room came,
It was
because
while playing.
okay, that makes sense, because your first job was a position coach,
Yeah.
right? So when you were playing, that passion for the strength and conditioning, was it, I like to put things on these scales, was it even to playing, or was it greater than playing?
Ooh, probably they were even, maybe a little bit high. Like I loved the training, even though I wasn't the best at, like I'm a 6'3". I got really long hips. Like back squatting has never been the best for me. Deadlifting, okay. But like I love to train. I love I mean, that's now literally how I feed my family. So I loved it because I came in, I didn't really take weight training seriously in high school. Like we had it, but that was back in the day where like, if you're not getting your depth, you're just soft, and it's like, well, maybe there's other anatomical things going on, and we can dive down that rabbit hole later. But I played as a freshman, right? So the guy that played in front of me, he was a senior. He was okay. I rotated in every series with him. I would then start a couple games, and I played as a freshman because the guy who was the head offensive line coach and the offensive coordinator actually went to my high school, played at the college that I was at, and he knew me and knew my background. I was better at basketball in high school, played football, really just played defensive end. And I showed up at college and he's like, hey, you're coming with me in the offensive line. And I was like, oh, I played DN. He's like, when you stop running like a tugboat, that's when you can play defensive end. I was like, okay, touche. So I went and I played offensive line. I got number 64. Anybody that plays football, like 64 is kind of like sure. 50s and 70s are kind of cooler numbers in terms of offensive linemen. But like, if you're going to be in the 60s, it needs to be like 66 or something.
That's what I had.
Right. See? So you get it. And, but I started to play because I was athletic. We played in a triple option offense. I had to veer release. I had to move. And I could do that because I played basketball and I was good at basketball. And I was really, I threw myself on the mercy of the court to my offensive line coach, who owned a gym. He owned a powerlifting gym, Next Level Fitness. That's where I first started working. That was my first job in strength and conditioning, was Next Level Fitness in Johnston, Rhode Island. And I was like, hey, we had like a combine, for lack of a better term, at the end of my freshman year. And I knew that I was going to be the starting right tackle the next year. And I was like, hey, I'm not that strong. I'm not that fast, and I'm not that big. I need your help. And he's like, all right, cool. Like, I'll give you a program and you can come up and you can train on Saturdays. And so Saturdays were strongman Saturdays. I drive 45 minutes from school to go and drive with him. Even if I was a dummy on Friday night, I made sure that if I was going to do that, I was not going to make sure that my teammates paid the price and I didn't train hard the next day. I'd still be the one getting my teammates, hey, let's get 4 or 5 of you all. Let's drive to Moyen's gym and we're flipping tires. We're pushing his Hummer in the parking lot. Like a lot of the vibe of here and just all of that stuff. And I got bigger, faster, stronger. I played and I was like, well, this is easier. Like I'm bigger, I'm stronger. Like I can move that guy easier.
So you felt the correspondence.
Oh, 100%. I was like, this is easier. Like, let me just keep doing this. So football's easier. And then out of nowhere, my freshman year, I was first team all conference. I was like, oh, wow. I didn't even think about that. Like there was and then I kind of got addicted. I was like, well, wait a minute. Like I didn't even I'm still on the bottom end of this. I went from a 225 pound high school kid to 245, 255. Now my junior year, I'm 285, so dialed in where if we're playing a team that's a 4-3 and I'm blocking the 3 technique up to the Mike linebacker, I'll eat a little bit more, be 295, 300 pounds. If I'm veer releasing against the 5 technique, I'll be 285, 290. Like I'll really dial in because I'm that obsessed. Same thing with the last podcast episode. Like if I'm going to do it, there's no such thing as moderation. Like I'm going to go and I'm going to do this thing. And I just found success that way.
So then that brings you to coaching the O-line.
So I was done playing football.
Yeah.
I did my undergraduate degree was in criminal justice, and same thing like with the weight room. I was like, school's easy. Like if you just go to class, they'll tell you what to study. Like the teacher's literally like, hey, this quiz is on chapters 1 through 3. I was like, okay. So if I read chapters 1 through 3, that's what's on the test. Okay. And so I did well, but I was just, I didn't know what I wanted to do going to college. It was back at like, I went to college in 2005, and that was kind of back around the time, like, if you don't go to college, you're a loser. You don't know what you want to do. So I was like, well, all right, my friends are going to go to this college. They're going to go play football there. I'm the worst of the four of them, but I like being their friend. And that my best friend from high school is going to go be a cop. I'll go be a cop. Sure. And I was in my senior year, and I was really, really smart about all my classes, freshman through senior year. But my last semester, my senior year, my only classes I had to take were ballroom dancing, volleyball. Like, I essentially had nothing to do.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And I was able to just lose all my weight from playing football. And I'll never forget, I was at a part of one of my jobs to help just pay bills was I would work either in basketball games as crowd control or at a softball game as like the foul ball retriever, because the guy who was in charge of that was actually from my hometown, and he would hire athletes to do that stuff. And so I saw Coach Moyen one time after a spring ball practice, and he's like, "Hey, would you coach with me? Like, I don't really want to coach without you." Like, I was a captain. I was in his wedding. Like, we had a great relationship. Now, did that mean that we would like go at each other's throat, during half times where I'm like, "You're wrong about this." Like, but I was a coach on the field. Like, "Hey, the free safety's not here. He's in the middle of the field." Like, I was that guy. And I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to grad school for criminal justice. I don't want to be an adult. I don't want to like grow up yet. Sure, I'll do that. Like, why not? I'll keep punting responsibilities down the road. And so I was coaching for him, going to grad school at night, and I couldn't stop. Like, I was working at his gym at the front desk, training athlete groups with him. And I'm in class and I can't stop thinking about football. I can't stop thinking about different plays because I was his assistant offensive line coach. In addition to going to grad school, I wasn't a GA. I was paying for everything on my own. I wasn't getting paid. This is what I was like, all right, cool. This seems like fun. And I was so bored in criminal justice class. Like, I knew the answers to questions, and I wouldn't answer until I felt bad for the professor just standing there, and she'd be like, "Oh, what's the da-da-da-da-da?" And nobody would talk. And I was like, well, this sucks for her. Like, all right, I'll raise my hand. I'll answer the question. But I was just so disengaged.
The heat is here, and I'm already hearing stories about people cramping and how it's screwing up their training sessions. The research shows optimal health outcomes at sodium levels 2 to 3 times the recommended level. As meatheads, we've known this for years. Element was built around this. For the past 2 years, I've used Element in my morning oatmeal. I put it in my coffee. I use it during training. Each stick has 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. There's no sugar, no fillers. It's just what your body needs. Stable energy with no crash, maintaining optimal fluid levels for peak performance in the gym, improves mental focus, helps regulate stress, and supports deeper sleep. Element just outdid themselves with this lemonade iced tea flavor. Same formula, but they added 50 milligrams of caffeine with L-theanine and polyphenols. Unlike isolated caffeine, this slows the curve. We all know that caffeine can dehydrate you. Well, not when it's mixed with Element. Go to drinkelements.com. You get a free 8-count sample pack with every order. I've never heard of anyone having a bad experience, but if you do, they make it right immediately, no questions asked.
And that's when I found out from a friend of mine, Mike Siriano, who I played with him at Bridgewater. He was a strength coach at URI. He was at a bunch of other places. And he's like, you can go to school for strength and conditioning. I researched it. Sure enough, I could. Withdrew from criminal justice grad school. They had a great program at Bridgewater. I enrolled there, and I started in January of 2010. And at that point, I was like, shit, I'm behind everybody. Like, I'm not the biggest, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the strongest.
Now, were you working at the DA's office at some point?
I did that in, whatchamacallit. I was doing that in the summer after I graduated with my undergrad. I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this thing, like, let's see what it's like, let's figure it out. So I'm from Falmouth, Massachusetts, where we have a lot of beaches around, like 20 minutes in any direction, there's a beach. And so I was working as a parking lot attendant. I was one of the really good employees. So as a good employee, you worked the weekend because it was busiest. Monday, Tuesday were my weekends, day off, and I worked Wednesday through Sunday. But I was like, well, hey, again, let's be a high achiever. Monday, Tuesday are my day off. I can intern at the district attorney's office. I'm sitting in court next to the juvenile female attorney. She's giving me things to do. I have a cubicle. I'm calling, like, I'm doing the thing. But I'm sitting down at lunchtime and everybody just seems miserable. And I'm like, well, I'm 22 years old. Like, I don't want to live in this kind of miserable life. Like, let me kind of find my passion. Yes, I'll still have to work, but like.
So you knew for sure that's not what you wanted to do.
Yes, that seed was kind of planted.
Okay. All right. So that just verified it.
Yes.
All right. So then you're back in when did the schooling change? Because you ended up with a PhD, right? In sports science. The
PhD is in health and human performance, technically.
I want to get into what you did for your PhD because it's kind of fucking obvious, but it's worth discussing. But when did you change as far as I want to go that direction? Because what was the master's in? Was that in
the master's is in strength and conditioning?
Okay, all right.
And so like truly in strength and conditioning, and that started in January of 2010. It ended in December of 2011. So
what was that? How was that like for you to pick up? Because everything that you've taken up to that point was not that path.
It was okay. It was like, again, you go to class, they'll tell you what to study, but like I also had 4 years of it with Coach Moyen.
Well,
and like,
kinda, right?
Correct. But like, yes, I didn't I had to learn what an H band was, a Z band was, and a sarcomere, right? Like,
yeah.
But in terms of like, if I want to get stronger, I have to lift heavy weight. Like,
yeah, but they don't teach you that in school.
Which is why it wasn't a big deal for me to go to those classes, because a lot of it, right? They're teaching you sarcomeres, they're teaching you the anatomy, and it's like, okay, cool. Let me learn about this anatomy. I'm learning with everybody else. Certain classes are teaching you how to coach athletes. And the first time you take it as a graduate student, you're learning from Dr. Robinson. Then the next time you take it, you're teaching. So I could just kind of assimilate because, like I said, I'll work hard. I'll show up. Hey, this is the syllabus that tells me what's going to be each week of the class. All right, I'll read that. There's the textbook. I'll read that. And then now I'll be willing to learn because I want to do this. Now, mind you, I'm still working at Coach Moyen's gym while I'm in grad school. So that helped me with that too.
So the gym environment, how was that different than the training environment that you had at college? Because it's one's private sector, one's not. There's a lot of differences between those two.
We didn't have a strength coach in a Division III school though. Like it was I had to be and that's where a lot of people are like, oh, Division III, like they kind of poo-poo it. Like, yes, nowadays there's more strength coaches at the Division III level, but we just didn't have people holding our hands like, hey, you have to show up and lift.
Well, if they have one, it's like one and 433 athletes.
And we had Moyen. And so like he gave me a program and he's like, hey, Mondays you do lower body, Wednesdays you do upper body. And it was on me to not be soft and be like, well, I don't want to do it today. No, I lifted and I knew I had, but again, going back to like being lazy, I was like, well, if my legs are stronger, it's going to be easier to block people. So I don't want to lift right now. I was learning discipline equals freedom without knowing what that meant. It's like, all right, I'm just going to do the thing. I didn't have an academic advisor being like, oh, you have to show like all the things that Division I athletes have of people holding their hands. I didn't have that. So it's like, I just had to go and do the thing. And that's where I would just lift on my own. And so it wasn't like working in that gym. I would train our athletes and we had like a whiteboard where kids could sign up, after school, there would be a 3 o'clock, a 3:30, a 4 o'clock. And that was fun. That was like, hey, this is a great environment to be in. And we're going to, we go from our warm up to our speed work, to our plyos, to our lift, and we're a factory. And I loved doing that. That was a blast. But when I had learned, like, wait a minute, I can work at a university and I can be with one team and I can be their strength coach and I can be there and be ingrained. Like, I've always wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself. And so to go deeper than just the one coach that they see 1, maybe 2 hours, 1 day, 3 days a week, I wanted that. And that's where I was like, okay, cool. This is teaching me how to get ready to go to college and what it's like to be a college strength coach.
So was the Division III schedule as a player and as a coach the same as you would see in, say, a Division I as far as time?
Minus the fact that more things will be like mandated, like, hey, you have to go to treatment. As a Division I player, they might even put a schedule reminder for you. They hold your hand a lot, which was one thing that I felt that was really difficult for me that we would not do specifically at Towson. And we started to get away from doing that at the end at Iowa, where you're going to have the AT send you a reminder that you have to go to rehab, versus at D3, like, no, you have to know to go and be a responsible adult and go and do the thing. Or I have to study, versus the academic staff's like, you have to be here at your study hall time and punch in at this time.
But you knew you
have to do the same thing. And that's why people were like, dude, for me being an athlete, it was easier. Like, well, I have to go to practice at this time. I have to lift here. I don't have the time to do all these other things because I have class here. It forced you to have structure. So that's why it actually is a little bit easier, because it's not all this like, well, wait, what do I do? No, you know the certain things. You have class at this time. I have practice here. Where do I fit everything else in there?
Well, that's where I was getting at earlier, is that structure, because there's a lot of hours. It's a lot of work. That's where you see most of the coaches that go through that whole pipeline come into that pipeline that way. Because if you take somebody that's working in a different pipeline, you say, okay, here, we're going to drop you in here. You might make $15 an hour. Forget the hour thing, but you're going to be working from 4:30, 5 in the morning until 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Every day of the week. You know, maybe it gets a little better, and maybe in the off season, where it's when you come from it, it's normal.
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying?
It's just what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's what you do. How did you distill down what you wanted to focus on for your PhD?
A friend of mine and a colleague at Iowa. So I graduated 2011. I was at Harvard working for them at the time. That was because James Frazier, head strength coach at Harvard, worked at Iowa. He sent me at Iowa to get a job from my internship in the summer. That did lead me to a job at the University of Maryland.
Was that before Iowa or after interning at Iowa?
After interning at Iowa, I worked at University of Maryland College Park.
Yes.
And then from there, I went back to Iowa.
Yeah.
And so at Iowa, I got back there in December of 2013. We hired a new guy on staff January 1 of 2015. So right after we had a pretty down year in 2014, we hired a guy who was an intern in 2013. He's now the head strength coach at He's the head strength coach and runs the department at Elon University in North Carolina. And he and I, when we were done during our day, because Coach Doyle was great, he's like, don't guard your desk. Once you've done what you need to do, like, we work long hours, you can go. And so if it wasn't our coverage day, we'd go and we'd play video games or we'd hang out. And he was talking about like, hey, there's this high performance manager thing, and like PhD can help you do that. And so I looked into it, and he and we started it at the same time in the fall of 2016. And so when you're one of 6 strength coaches, technically 5, but you hide that 6th person like everybody does. Oh, you work in analytics. Oh, you work here. When you're one of 5 working with 120 athletes, you have a lot of time for professional development. And so that's when I started the PhD in health and human performance, with the goal of like, hey, I want to be an administrator. And a lot of administrators have a PhD. Let me get this higher level of education. So when I sit down at a table like this with a orthopedic surgeon or just a athletic trainer, they have licenses, they have all these things. It's like, I'm not some just meathead strength coach. Yes, I am. I love to lift and do the things, but now I also can bring a certain level of education to the table. So when I say something, you're not just like, oh, he's a dumb idiot that doesn't know what he's talking about. No, I have the same education and knowledge about loading the tissues, getting athletes strong as you do in general medicine.
Well, was part of that decision and I may date myself here because things may have changed, where for a long time, the strength and conditioning coach was kind of capped at what they could make because it's called strength and conditioning coach, where I think Doyle was one of the first ones, or that now there's a new title, right? And that new title isn't necessarily strength and conditioning coach. It could be like manager of athletic development, but then that kind of erases what that pay gap is to be able to create a new pay gap.
Yeah,
did that go into any of the thought? Because I would see it could,
but at the same time, it's like it doesn't matter. It all matters what human resources, what we'll call you, because like Doyle's title is like executive director of something, right? And so it's all just internally what they're going to call you, and then you can call yourself whatever else you want externally. And I think like getting to that point where we start fracturing, like, oh, I'm the head of athletic development, I'm head of peak performance, I'm head of human, like we just start fracturing further from like, we're a strength coach. Like, sure, call like.
Well, the way it was explained to me was that actual title in a collegiate setting had a certain salary cap.
Maybe.
So they had to come up with
But like in the same vein, like Rob Glass, who was the head strength coach for Oklahoma State football, made $1 million a year. So that you got like,
sure. Yeah.
So like maybe director of football, like, yeah, it's been broken, but at the end of the day, it's the head sport coach that's going to be like, hey, HR, I want to hire that guy.
Yeah.
And call him what you want to call him. but I want to pay him this to keep him here. And the good thing about Doyle was it's like, because just the weird part is like, okay, you know, if you're the offensive coordinator, sure, it puts you in a category to get paid more, maybe, but you're still just an assistant sport coach.
Sure.
So it could be assistant sport coach hyphen offensive coordinator. I don't know, but you want to get paid the same as a coordinator. Call me what you want to call me. I don't care. Just pay me like the person that coordinates your strength and conditioning stuff. Now, in today's all college sport world, basketball, football, women's basketball, baseball, the sports that drive money, the rules have changed. And so like being a head football strength coach now, you used to be able to say, well, I'm with the athletes more. Now with the rule change, you're actually not. So maybe we don't need to be making now I want strength coaches to keep getting paid, but like some of these other positions where it's like, we're not with them as much anymore. So maybe we kind of have to change that tune a little bit.
I think I missed this rule. What's this rule change? They reduce
now in the off season, especially with all the portals, like you can have teams in college P4 football are doing like OTA style training where you can have a ball, you can have the position coaches doing things and being more involved in the off season.
Okay.
It used to be, hey, we're in the 8-hour off season period. The sport coach, strength coach, here's what I want done. Make sure that they're ready for spring ball. Spring ball, they can train and be with you. Spring ball is done. Summertime, get them ready. No, it's fully integrated now. You can have, a practice. You'd have to look at the exact NCAA rules on when the ball can be there, how long the ball can be there for, but you can have specific skill instruction with your position coach now.
Would it still stand true that the strength coach spends more time with the athletes than any other coach? Or is that
maybe
kind of getting dicey now?
Like it's definitely changing.
Okay.
Right? Like because the sport coach can be around them more. And I don't know the rules on being able to watch film, but it went from, oh, for sure to it might depend on the place that you go.
Ooh. I don't know what to think about that. Right? Because it used to be the strength coach would spend more time with the athletes, so more trust would be built.
You can still build that trust though.
Yeah,
It comes in different spots. So instead of like,
not if it's all digital.
True, but you're exactly. And that's where it's like, hey, when you only work with that one team, you have to go deep. It's your responsibility to go deep. So you should be around the facility, especially if it's your coverage day. You should be poking your head in the rehab facility room, saying hi and saying what's up to the guys. You should be at the meals. You should be at practice. When you're that tied to the success of the team, that's where you're making those micro deposits and you're watching practice. Hey man, that was a great catch over there. Hey, you're still spending time with them.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit different.
Now, was a thesis on reactive force development?
So that was based again on Nick, and like a lot of what we were learning about was like, hey, what's this individualized force velocity profiling? If I am a type 1, I'm a grinder, slow twitch. I've gotten some a bench press during a powerlifting meet prep where I got a 0.09 on the VBT on a band assisted bench. Like I can grind for days. I'm not very, twitchy. Nick, complete opposite. He's twitchy, not as much of a grinder. So that was really fascinating to me to learn about, like, oh, there's differences in how could we kind of train athletes to be better at what they're not good at, still work on what they're good at, but hey, is this a way to bring up their weaknesses? And we had done a pilot study of that at Iowa where it's like, hey, we're going to do a drop jump off of this force plate. We're going to see. Well, and we were just very arbitrary, like, hey, right down the middle. If you were, anybody that's above the average, you're force deficient, you're already good at velocity, let's do more force stuff. Heavy jumps, the velocity people, you're already good at expressing force, let's teach you how to express the force faster. And so we ran that pilot study. And so what I did with my study, my dissertation was take that and apply it in a team setting, but with a control group. And that's the part that people miss.
That's the most interesting part to me.
But that's the part that strength coaches don't do when they put in some new exercise or some new intervention. It's, hey, we're going to add this. They don't control it.
What was the control group?
They didn't do the intervention.
They just normal training.
They did their normal training. One group was, hey, and it was, so the word in research is random stratification. So like if you set a benchmark of, hey, anybody, for our research, it was 1.4 because you have to do everything based off prior literature. So 1.4, if you jumped above it, you were randomly placed into the force group. The next person who jumped greater than 1.4 was in the control group and didn't do any force training. And so you go about it that way. And the individuals in the intervention of force before training 3 days a week, they would do progressively heavier barbell jump training. And that was, again, based off of the prior research from other authors that had done a study over 5 weeks with loads similar to this. They used the Smith machine. I wanted to do something that was more scalable by just using regular barbells and jumps. And then the other people did band assisted jumps, and we would add extra bands for extra assistance to get them off the ground faster. But there was still a control group that didn't do any of that and did all the other training. And all the other training, when you look at what an off season looks like, is they're still doing acceleration work, high force, heavy weight, max velocity work, short contraction time, dynamic effort squats, heavy deadlifts. So really good structured training can still bring up all those qualities in novice athletes because we're still dealing with such novice athletes.
We live in some crazy times right now where there's not a day that I don't go on the internet and I see some BS crap about this research study or this research study. This isn't new. I've been in this industry for 4 decades. One thing that's helped me is 8 years ago, the Mass Research Review started and became a godsend. The Mass Research team are professional researchers that are also meathead. So they've done this great job of being able to take all these topics and put them into this research review that I get every month. I'm excited to partner with them. I spoke with Eric Helms about this on the podcast. It's simple, it's easy. They're offering a 20% discount to all podcast listeners. The code is elitefts20. When you join, you get the research review, which is going to be sent to you every single month. That has 7 to 9 articles in there. The archive, which is 1,500 articles, thousands of videos. Just head over to massresearchreview.com and use the code elitefts20. The link will be in the description. So in the 2 groups that were not the control groups were the training that you put in there stacked upon what they were already doing.
Think about it like a corrective exercise.
Okay. So nothing was pulled out though.
No.
Okay. Because the argument could be made, now you're throwing too much, but either way, the results were they all kind of had the same across all 3 groups.
Yes.
Which my takeaway from it was those interventions may help if you have somebody with a higher training age.
Yes.
But the big point that we're going to elaborate on is the training age of a lot of these athletes is not what a lot of coaches think it is.
Not even close.
Right. So that's why, that would be my takeaway from that. That's why there was not that much difference.
I agree.
Where if you take them into 12 years of good training, then what would you think?
It would have to be, and so this has been a conversation that's been ongoing with Joseph Johnson, who's the publisher of Ultimate Athlete Concepts, a bunch of book. Like, we've been reading through Super Training 15 pages a week and been having podcast episodes to talk about it with strength coaches. Mm-hmm. I say all of that because in the book, Yuri and Mel talk about what does it mean to be a qualified, and their criteria was, yes, it was years of training, but it was those number of years of training under a certified and an expert coach. Mm-hmm. So they could have 12 years of training, but if they weren't actually working with a good qualified coach. So yes, probably, I think you could probably dial it down to 6 years of a really good strength coaches program. You can start to now individualize it okay, hey, you're bad at, you need more force production. We're not going to do as much of the velocity stuff. We're going to now really dose you with the heavier stuff. You now get into the point where it's not as scalable for those FCS mid-major schools because they don't have the staff. For me, I was the one strength coach that worked with football. I still had other teams. My assistants had 3 to 4 other teams, and we couldn't make it where it's okay, the linemen that are force deficient, they have to do a lighter weight versus the linemen that are velocity deficient. We couldn't get that intricate with it. We had to just be linemen, if you're doing a resisted sled sprint, it's with 90 pounds. Okay, when the linemen are done, we have to change it for the semis or the hybrids. You're doing 70 pounds. Skill guys, you're doing 45 pounds. That had to be good enough based off of the logistics that we had. So you could really get into the weeds if you wanted to with these staffs that have 8, 9, 10 people, and you have the unlimited budget and the unlimited equipment to drive that needle. But I would then go back to what we just said. If you're dealing with athletes that are that novice anyways, you don't give chemo for a headache. you don't need to do it then until maybe if you have an athlete that sticks with you 4 or 5 years and you want to now give that athlete that really refined, awesome training.
Well, the training age is let's talk about that a little bit, because let's say we look at that from two perspectives, which are kind of obvious. You have the ones in the weight room, right? They know how to lift weights. Their technique is good with lifting weights. They know compensatory acceleration. They know how to move with force, and the technique's good. And so that's one thing. But you could take that same thing and then say, now when they're on the track or field, their ability to run, the running mechanics it's not, those are two different things.
Correct.
Right. And with the athletes that we're speaking about, I think that part is developed way sooner, because they're exposed sooner, right, than what the other one is. So they could have a training age that's adequate here, but not here.
And that's where a lot of sport coaches mess it up, because they say, we got this elite guy, this elite whatever. Yes, on the field, all of those things. In the weight room, he's a training age of 2, and on the field, he's a training age of 12.
Yes.
They're different people.
And then in their sport skill,
correct,
they're the training age of where they're actually competing at. Right. So there's 3 different training ages that are I think that's why it becomes hard for people to kind of define, because the strength and conditioning coach is going to be working on rubber and turf, right? Those two things, which are kind of like the same person with 2 different training ages. Whereas interesting, because I think what we're looking at really is adaptation, the ability to adapt to a training stimulus. Whatever that's all this distills down to the very bottom. Forget the exercises and all this other shit. What's the stimulus we want to adapt to? And so they can be very efficient on the field in the grass, which means you can push them a little bit harder. The same way, the question back to you, because the more efficient they can become in the weight room, say a high level power lifter or high level Olympic weightlifter, the ability to do high levels of work at high intensities will start to drop a little bit, because their neuromuscular efficiency is so high. Like when they lift, more things are doing the work. Right. Is that the same when you're dealing with the speed work that's being done on turf and grass?
Yeah. When you're working with those high level track and field athletes where they're at that genetic peak for their throwing or their sprinting, or even if you have those high level wide receivers, like anybody doing their sport, playing basketball, you still just have to generally expose them to it. So you take that and you dose it, and you understand what their effort is, what their intent is on field, court, whatever it is. But yes, there is, the analogy we used to use is that athlete has a bigger fire. They can't go to the fire as often because they're going to get burnt.
So the minimal effective dose is what's the most important to learn if you're dealing with that higher level.
Now with that, the way that you can then fix that minimum effective dose is you can then start to push the max recoverable volume, and you do that in the off season. So yes, minimal effective dose in season, because the thing is that's most important is playing the game. But and this is again what's happened when the pendulum swings too far, in an effort to never burn the cake, don't burn the steak, right? Like we don't overtrain them. Well, now we've undertrained athletes, because now we're trying to apply minimal effective dose in the off season, when it's like, no. We're trying to see how much work can they do and still recover from it. So we're trying to raise the floor so we can then raise the ceiling with them, instead of just always doing the minimum to get the stimulus that we want. We have to push that. How much work can they keep doing before they're now training as they're maladaptation to it. So we have to push max recoverable volume in the off season. So then that way, when we're touching the minimal effective dose, we can keep pushing that as well.
All right. So if you're not pushing that max, then over a period of years, it's going to just dip a little bit each year.
Exactly.
Which I think my theory of what happens to guys when they go to the NFL and why it's such a short career is they're forced to do so much training while they're in college, that there's a residual carryover that you're going to have, which we kind of know just from block periodization models, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't keep up and just do the minimum, after about 3 or 4 years, they probably just fell that 1% under what's required to actually stay. That's my theory.
Well, and you also see it with kids that, there's another private sector thing that's really unfortunate to see, is you see an athlete play, even if they play 4 years at 2 schools, right? And then they go and they get ready for a pro day. And not everybody does this. So let me just preface that. Like, not every strength coach does that. Like, Tony Villani down in Florida is a fantastic coach that helps athletes run really fast. He's awesome. There are other coaches in the industry that you see where it's like, they train them for 8 to 12 weeks. And then it's almost like they're the reason why that athlete performed well in the combine. And it's like, are we just completely negating everything that their strength staff did with them or their sport coach and the film that they put out? Like, yes, that's the icing on the top. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Good job. But let's not, like, you don't eat a cake that has no icing. You don't eat just icing. Like, you want to have a good balance of both. So that's the really frustrating part about that, is that does nobody any service when you almost make it seem like you're the reason for their athlete success.
All right. So the question I have with the strength and conditioning, and I'll preface this the same way that you just did and say not all, because it's never not all. When you look at these three different pillars that I talked about, the skill practice, the stuff they're there for,
Yep.
right? The actual, that's filmed, critiqued, and coached left and right, right? The speed work, a lot of times that's going to be filmed and critiqued, right?
Yeah.
For the mechanics of all that.
Yeah.
Especially if those drills are high correspondence drills that are going to carry over to the field.
Yeah.
All right. Now we go into the weight room. Technique is for shit, so I'm going to be really nice here. When I've visited many, Division I schools, Division II as well, and watched the weight training sessions, the way that these athletes can fuck up basic things like machine work blows my mind. And then the coaches are there yelling at them, right? Hyping, right? Which is fine. They're doing a fucking hammer lat pull down, right? And the body English is through, it's out of control. And my takeaway from that, right, was, as the meathead, you see that and you're like, what the fuck? You could use half the weight, stimulate the muscle way better, and do this with better technique, probably get stronger, right? And not look like kind of like an idiot. Yeah. But my takeaway from it, that the one thing I always come back to is when I see those things, and it's almost all the time, usually with machines, the Olympic lifts a little bit better, dialed in. Squats, 5 out of 10, right?
Yeah.
Kind of right into there. And when I see that, the thing that when I watch that and when I leave, the thing that tells me if they're going to be a winning team or not is how coordinated and how structured that whole session was.
Facts.
Right.
Facts.
And I've seen one of the worst that I've ever seen. The team went on to, make it to the national championships. But with that one occurrence, I've never seen organization like that. I've never seen the players together in these small groups like that. I've never seen a leader of every one of the small groups act the way that they did. It was, I don't want to say it was military-ish, because they didn't need that much of that, what do I want to say, screaming at it. And it was just perfect. The move, go. The effort was there, which it was terrible to look at, but the effort was, I'm saying the effort was there. Yeah. So when I walked away from that, I'm like, this team is ready for anything, right? From the coach all the way down to the assistant coaches, to the players, to the leaders of the little group of the players. And to me, that's like, that wins games.
Yep.
Right. That's culture. That's what wins games. But I still am like, why in the hell, is this so neglected? And I still don't know the answer to that. If it's because it doesn't seem like it would be a hard fix, especially at the bigger places where you have, an assistant coach with every small group.
Yeah.
Am I off on saying this?
I would say people just never even thought, like, it is like most good ideas. It's so simple that people probably never even thought about it. Like, hey, let's film, let's review how your weightlifting session went. And there are some outside organizations that'll audit, like, hey, how did your lift groups go? Let's audit your programs. And those, like, I haven't done it, but I've heard about where you can have that done through outside governing bodies if you want. But that's a very easy fix, and it would just start at the top with a good leader strength coach that truly believes the things that we believe, that I learned. I learned from Coach Doyle, who learned from Mike Boyle. Is like, if somebody walks into the room, what your athletes are doing is a reflection of you. Yes, it's the good clean, it's the bad clean, it's the good everything, which is why social media will only show you the best of whatever, not everything.
Yeah.
And yes, it's to that to a T, because if you walk in and you see my athletes at Towson, where I'm the head strength coach, and if they're dicking around and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, that's on me. You're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. It was a little thing that we had on our desk, and I still have it with me. Like, we're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. So fix it. Right? Do whatever you have to do. If that athlete can't get into the position, like if you're seeing a shitty lat pull down, fix it. Don't allow it to happen.
Well, it's interesting because I don't see it if it's a Bulgarian squat. I don't see it.
Yeah, because they'll just be like, it's not as important.
I see better form there. You know,
that's they'll be like, oh, well, that matters more, Dave. Like that, the RFE, the Bulgarian, we're gonna that's in our B block movement instead of like a C block.
For coordination, right? But for fucking hypertrophy,
I agree with you.
You know what I'm saying?
But it goes back to what I said before, where it's a lot harder for you to have to be like, hey, we're gonna do no, we're either gonna do it right or we're gonna do it again. You have to now tell an athlete, hey, that wasn't good enough, and it goes back to that head guy actually being like, no, that's not how a lat pull down is fucking done. We're going to do it right. And then fixing it with your staff in, like, I've seen some great, like Kaz Kazadi, he got let go at TCU football. I don't know why, but he got let, and I went and I got to watch them work. They would meet before the session of, hey, this is what's supposed to happen. And each person on his staff who was leading a different area, this is what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to flow. And then this person takes over and do. And this was after they talked about it the day before, because when they're done with the day, they're going to they meet as a staff. Hey, this is what happened during everything that we did. These were some adjustments that we made. Here's what we have tomorrow. This is what we're going to set up with our, they call them black shirts instead of interns. This is what we're going to do to be prepared. So like, there is those good programs of like, we're going to be highly level and highly detailed, but like, that's where we're at.
Well, the reason I point this out is it seems like, and I get both. I'm biased, right? Because I come from a meathead world, right? So I'm going to see things differently than somebody that's training the athlete to be able to play football, right? I'm going to see those things more glaring. But when I look at that, right? So you have a stable environment to where it's a machine, right? And everything's going to be based upon percentage, which kind of falls back, not on the machines per se, but percentage based upon RPE.
Yeah.
Right. So and you got to anchor that. So you got to anchor what 100% is, and you got to anchor with intensity, right? When I talk this, you have intensity and effort. That's how I look at the things. Like intensity would be the percentage of a 1 rep max.
Yeah.
Effort would be like a set of 8, an 80%. That's real. 80%, some can do 15, some can do 6, right? But if we say effort, you want to go 1-2 reps shy of failure.
Yep.
Right? You need to kind of know what that feels like. What's the easiest way to train an athlete to know how that feels, what that feels like? Well, in the most stable environment that you possibly could. A seated chest press, for example.
Yep.
Right? You can push them, with that good form to be able to know what that is. And then that correspondence to be able to know what that feels like to be 1 or 2 reps shy of failure will carry over to that overhead press for them to be able to know, hey, I'm about where it needs to be.
Yep.
And not turn it into a clean press to be able to get the last 2 reps to where, if we're talking hypertrophy and build muscle, would be more effective for them to actually get closer.
Yep.
You get what I'm saying
Yes.
with that? And so it's a little thing, I get it, right? But it's not, because it will teach them how to anchor that effort in the weight room where they know how to do that on the field, right? That's why they're there. Right.
That's a really good point. And I think, but it also goes to the fact that I think more strength coaches need to train, and they need to push themselves to that instead of just, whatever willing, like they need to train more themselves. Like all strength coaches.
They don't.
Not all of them. They
well,
like, it's not
hold on.
like,
let me backtrack that. I understand the reason why, if they're in it for a long time, they do it less. but do they start with it?
Correct. And at least they have that foundational
Yes.
knowledge, and they could eventually, like, they can go to that well or go to that fire. You know, like, okay, you've been, you know, like Coach Doyle, he was competing in powerlifting for a while, and he wasn't competing in powerlifting by the time I had gotten there, but he had felt it and knew what
And they're strong man,
right?
Yeah.
Correct. And you, so yeah, when you have certain years in the game, you don't have to. But as a young guy or a girl, you have to. You have to do it. You have to know. You don't have to be the strongest person on the staff. You don't have to be the strongest person that you coach. But you should know what it feels like to walk out 90% and have to go hit it for a triple or for max. Like, you should train to know what that feels like.
And they're not?
Not all of them. Or they're not doing it and not doing it while playing, doing something else. Like, they won't. Here's the other part. They won't do speed work, and then they'll only squat, and then they'll be like, well, I don't understand why these athletes can't hit, 90% for a triple. It's like, they're in season. Like, I know what your proliferance chart shows, but you're only lifting and you haven't gone through the other 50% of the stressors that the athletes are going through. So no, they're not, because again, the pendulum has swung from like, oh, we're going to lift hard, we're going to lift heavy, to everything has to be optimal. And I'm only going to do this when I feel good. And I'm not like, that isn't the norm. Does it happen at certain places? Yes. But it's not the norm for strength coaches to just go out there and get after it.
I built Elite FTS in 1998, 27 years ago, with the aim to help educate as many people as I could in strength and conditioning. And the way to do that was to keep all the content complementary. The way that we've been able to do that since day one is by providing the best products possible to help your training program. If you can put the item in a gym bag or load plates on it, we have it, and it will work. Everything from SS yoke bars to American press bars, bands. We also have a strength equipment specialist staff that helps outfit home gyms, sport training centers, colleges that have over 3 decades of experience and also have spent a lot of time working as coaches, so they understand the flow of the weight room and how things actually get done. If you're serious about your training and you want to up your game and support the podcast and all the content that we provide, head over to elitefts.com and use the code TABLETALK at checkout to receive 10% off your orders. That's kind of like you staying in after college, where you went to my brain just kind of just fizzled on me. The Department of Justice, it wasn't the DOJ, but
at the DA's office.
That, like, you staying at the DA's office and just continuing your career there. Like, why are they there?
And you're training in like like for some of these coaches in a beautiful facility. Like, go and train, like go, even if it's an hour, like do something, like go and push yourself, find a program, stick to it, do it, like run it, figure it out for yourself instead of filling yourself with head knowledge. Go fill yourself with heart knowledge of, okay, this is what any program, take whatever it is, run it for a little bit, figure out how it can apply to you and your athletes, but go and feel what that's supposed to feel like.
So then how do they anchor? I get how they're going to anchor the main lifts, right? Because they're percentage based. So I get that. How do they anchor the effort of the other lifts? Just 3 sets of 10, do what you want to do?
3 sets of 10. Hey, what'd you do last week? We're either going to do 3 sets of 10 again. Let's try to go a little heavier. It's 3 sets of 8. Try to drop some of the weight this way. Like, just kind of pure linear periodization that way.
With athletes that they're trying to get to increase weight, to gain weight, right? So basically the hypertrophy for those people is going to mean more, than the main strength.
Yep.
If they're 30 pounds lighter than what they should be, and their snatch and clean goes up, but yet they didn't gain 5 pounds of muscle, it doesn't really help them a whole lot on the field, does it?
No. But that's where coaches will be like, well, but hey, they'll move the goalpost. Well, hey, sport coach, I got the athlete stronger. It's like, yeah, but at the end, remember, let's go back to what our job is. Reduce the likelihood of injury and the potential severity of it. Let's then get athletes back on the field when they do get hurt But most strength coaches will say, no, my job is to get you strong or fast or whatever it is. Like, look, I did my job, sport coach, in the same way that an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I once heard they said the only person that really cares if the team wins is a sport coach, because the offensive coordinator can be like, hey, we put up 40. The DC could be like, hey, well, we held them to 10. Right? The strength coach, hey, they all improved by this much. The AT, hey, they were healthy. The sport coach, just win, baby, win.
So if we go back to what your thesis was, and we apply this training age across the board, which applies to all of it across the board, then why do we see so much, for lack of a better word, fuckery with technology, with what we would essentially call beginners in the weight room?
Because it starts with the education problem, like you said, where there's not you don't really get taught these foundational things when you're in the university setting, in your bachelor's degree or in your master's degree. Again, there are pockets of it. But the fact that I was introduced to a professor this year who's teaching Bondarchuk in his transfer of training book in class, that's not normal. So I had to interview him and be like, dude, Taylor, how in the world? So there's pockets of it. There's different universities that are teaching it that way, but that's not the norm. So these kids, it's not their own fault. They're going to universities, they're going to colleges, and they're being taught by professors that are professing things that have never been in a weight room like this. I've never smelt the air of a weight room like Iowa, even a weight room like Towson, where it's Division I football, and at one point Towson played for the national championship. You have these professors that have never worked in these environments professing to students about how to get people stronger. They're overweight, they don't train, and they're educating our youth. And the things that are being taught of hey, we can kind of go back to defending ourselves. Hey, sure, you didn't get their snatch stronger because it's a technical lift, but you can show them that you got your isometric mid-thigh. It's all of this CYA instead of doing right and actually having a really good job. Think about this, Dave. These kids are graduating from graduate school or even undergraduate school without ever actually programming for an athlete. Would you hire, or if you're a plumber, would you hire a plumbing student that just graduated from trade school that never worked on a toilet or a sink?
Ooh.
No.
Well, hold on here. Because if we're talking Division I, Division II, they're going to come into a program and set up cones, right? They're not going to have the authority
as an
to have
intern,
a
but I'm
voice.
talking about at school, truly when you're at your bachelor's degree program.
No, I get that. But they're still, if they go to work for somebody else, they're going to fold into whatever that somebody else's program is and expect to just, sit down and shut up.
You can, but you should then also be writing programs. Of
course, yeah.
You should be writing programs, submitting it to them, and starting to prove your value and your worth as an intern. And then your second semester, if you've proven that you're actually good, hey, write the program for these return to play athletes. Because that's what happened for me when I was at Harvard. Hey, we want you to stick around this semester, write the program for the men's and women's sailing team. I had to give it to the head strength coach for men's and women's sailing. He had to approve it. He had to give it to the head strength coach. Then I could coach those athletes on the floor with Curtis on the floor as well. Yeah. Right. So you got to do it that way. And then, so you think about the schooling process. If you've got these students that are writing programs, and then let's say maybe the athletes aren't going to be the athletes that are actually the kids at the school, because we're talking about Indiana football. Okay. But you're going to write this program, and then part of one of your classes is you have to take a group of the students, you have to actually coach them and learn what that's like. And so that's where you change it.
I was looking at this from a very narrow lens of just Division I, Division II football. And that's not where most strength coaches, if they're going to school, are going to end up.
Exactly.
Right. So they are going to have that ability to be able to work with more athletes than they can handle, which is this whole nother issue that kind of comes into there which it's an interesting profession. It really is, because on one end, you can have this amazing environment. Then on the other end, you're responsible for 150 kids. How do you go about doing that in any effective manner? But I would kind of roll that back and say, well, if they're beginners and it's just basic shit.
Yep.
Like, it shouldn't be that difficult, but it seems like it continues to be that way.
Well, I think it's because like you start looking on social media nowadays and like again, it's a fine line because like what we do is it is difficult, right? Like you need to learn it. And then once you reached a certain level of mastery and understanding things, like it isn't, I mean, we're now talking after the Artemis just went around the moon. Like it's not that level of complexity. Like, yes, we need to continue to train our athletes. And if you're going to lift something heavy, it's probably for a limited number of reps. If it's light, it's really fast. If it's light, it's probably for a lot of reps. And I think that some strength coaches might feel that they have to they have to show off like, well, look what I can do. And it's like, no, you need to give the athletes what they need, not what you can prove, not what like this big, crazy, fancy program that you have. Use it for the athletes that need it, because if you give them the adaptation that they don't need too soon, you're robbing them twice. You're robbing them when they actually need that stimulus in their body but you inappropriately gave it to them too early. You need to just give them that simple and I know it's difficult because you might get back to comparison. Oh, well, at this school, they're doing this and I'm not. I need to be like, no, you don't. You need to be you. And you need to apply your principles, do your really good, simple, basic stuff, and then have your training levels to it. Keep your sword sharp so that way when you do have to pull it out and do some really advanced methods for some advanced athletes, you can, but you don't need to give your advanced athletes, like this coach is doing RPR with middle school athletes. It's like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? Why? Like, I don't need chains and bands with my freshman and sophomore high school athletes, even for those college athletes. Like, let's learn how to actually accelerate the bar and have intent with just straight weight before we start introducing bands and chains and, cluster sets, or, hey, we're not even setting a percent base. It's literally today's a max effort 2. How many can you get?
Well, that's always been a funny one to me, because if you take the coaches that would fall in that category and you ask them if it was your own kid and it came into a training age, say they're 10, or whenever you feel that they're old enough to be able to go through training without you ruining training for the rest of their life, right? It could be whatever age. Are you going to do that with them? Or are you just going to teach them how to do? Every one of them are going to say, oh, fuck no, we're going to just do the basic shit. They're going to learn how to squat. They're going to learn how to do push-ups, right? And learn how to do pull-ups. And like,
Keep pulling that thread. Do that with the athletes you have.
Well, it's the same training age, right? If they got the same type of thing, which blows my mind. With your network, your strength coaches network, you have private sector and you have the public sector, right? And you're around both all the time, and you've worked in both. The grass is always greener, right? So there'll be 2 questions. What can the private sector learn from? What should the private sector know that they don't know about the public sector with the grass is always greener type thing, and then vice versa?
So if you're in the private setting and you're looking at college and it looks like it's great, I mean, both of you, the grass is greener where you water it. We understand that. When you're working in college, you sometimes don't get to do what you want to do. You're doing what the sport coach wants to do or what the administrators tell you to do. So you're having to you might be doing like that staff that you saw, they might have been doing lat pull downs that were not what they wanted to do, but they had to do it because the sport coach was changing and said, you have to do it and you have to get them and yelling. And I don't care what the technique looks like. So when you're working in college, you are part of that coach's staff and you will do what they say or you will be replaced, because there is an army of people who want that job. They'll do it. They'll do the thing you won't do and they'll do it for less. So you have to understand that when you're working in the private setting. It's not like there could be those strength coaches like, son of a gun, Dave's talking about me and I really respect Dave, but like I had to keep my job. I had there was a strength coach that had to lie about his numbers and they had to have 4-handed spots on bench presses so the sport coach could see the weight going up. The sport coach didn't care, but that there was actually, I'm lifting the bar, but they had to prove it. So if you're in the private setting, that's a reality. And you're also you're at the whim of when the head sport coach says that you're going to train. And if they say you're training at 6 in the morning, you're going to be there at 6 in the morning and beforehand getting everything set up. If you're working in college and you're looking at the private setting and you're like, oh, look at, I can train people whenever I want. Like we talked off air. No. You can train people when they're willing to show up. So if you're going to train high school kids or school age kids, guess when you're not training them? In the middle of the day, unless they're homeschooled. Moms and dads, if you're going to train adults, unless they work from home, you're going to train them before work or after work. So you have to go and find clients. You have to find people that want to train with you. You're probably coming from the high school, college, pro setting. You're not very good at marketing yourself and talking about, oh, I can do this, because we're blue collar, hardworking people. We don't want to say the things that we've done. And you also don't understand that you have to give away programs for free. You have to do these things that maybe you wouldn't normally do. So it's not greener over there. If you want to just write programs, then when you own a gym and the toilet breaks, if you're the owner, you're either A, fixing it, B, you have somebody on staff that's fixing it, but you've paid that person. Like you're paying with your time or your money. And okay, if there's a leak in the ceiling, you're talking to your landlord or you're the one fixing it, versus when you work in college or wherever, you can call facilities and they come and fix it.
The NAL or NIL may have changed what I'm about to say, but one of the other differences is if you're in the public sector, you can look at the athlete more from a quadrennial standpoint. If you're looking at building the program and actually work back from that whole thing.
Yep.
Whereas in the private sector, you don't know if they're going to be there after whatever agreement that they signed. So you got to work, it's weird. You got to work forward out, right? Like how do you keep them here? Where the other one, you have the opportunity to be able to work back.
Yeah. And you also, when I'm working in the private setting, like I now have relationships with, moms, dads, the siblings of the athlete that I'm here to serve. And if you're continuing to do a good job by them and you're getting bigger, faster, stronger, you can typically assume that they're going to be with you and you're going to continue to help them in their trajectory throughout the course of their career. If you're working at a university, you're almost always thinking it's a one and done. Will I have this athlete again in the future? And you're starting everything from scratch. So like you're having and again, this all depends where you're at. If you're in the Ivy League working with any of those sports and they don't have NIL, that's not the situation. You work at any of the service academies. The Navy, they have kids that are still there for 4 to 5 years. Long-term athletic development still matters. So there's different pockets of it. But yeah, when you get in the private setting, you can be a guy like Bobby Stroop that worked with Patrick Mahomes, and all Bobby wanted to do was work with middle school kids and keep getting them better and helping them get better at sport. And then when an athlete latches on and finds success with you, well, then now that's when you're able to help them plan all of the things because you're there for their success. So that way they can keep playing their sport versus that athlete comes in, they have an NIL, they're not actually stuck to any contract. They might leave after 7 months. So you're really putting Band-Aids on. You're trying to do as best as you can. You're trying to if you're a good strength coach, you're trying to figure out, hey, what did you do? Who is your other strength coach? Let me talk to them. Let me find out, what's your physical limitations? Because a lot of these kids on these recruits, they won't even disclose to you. If I'm visiting here and I'm meeting with the strength staff or the medical staff, they won't disclose an injury until they sign. And then it's like, oh, hey, by the way, I have a bum shoulder. We should probably get this fixed before I play for you.
I didn't even think about that. Because I'm aware that they would have to get a hold of their high school coach if they're coming in. But they could have they could have 20 more people coming in that are just transfer portal.
Dave, we had over 50% of our roster was brand new when I was my last year at Towson.
So you got to get a hold of all those strength coaches to see what they were doing.
Correct.
Oh, wow. Plus any of the recruits that you have coming in.
And they don't always come in at the same time. So like for us at Towson, so our mid-major coaches that are listening to this, they can empathize where you might have a wave of kids that came in the beginning of the signing period each week. And that's where you have to have really good standardization processes with your staff and with your medical staff of, okay, hey, ATs, they can do a true orthopedic, they can evaluate joints, but then, hey, me as a strength coach, let's figure out some global and local movement qualities. Let's take them through. Let's teach them what are our core lifts. All right. For us, it's going to be a back squat, a trap bar deadlift, a reverse lunge, bench press, RDL, pull up. Okay. We're going to teach them how to do that this first week. We're going to see how they move, but you're doing that every single week with brand new athletes. So you have to have really good standard operating processes.
wow, that would suck.
Uh-huh.
I overlook that one because I'm not in that sector, so it's like, oh, fuck, like that would suck, because you want to get to the thing that you want to get to as soon as you can get to,
Correct.
which is getting them better and try to reduce that intake process as much as you possibly can.
But you also have to keep in the back of your mind, like, we can't burn the steak. We can't we can't, no matter how hard we try, we can't have a baby in 9 months. We can prenatal vitamins, we can sleep, we can do all the things to help mom and baby have the best pregnancy possibility. So when these athletes come in, we can't speed up cellular adaptation and tendon and collagen matrix being laid down just because we want to. Because some of these transfer kids, let's also remember this, I had great relationships with the kids. The kids that were on the team would tell the transfers, hey, they're the real deal. They're not a bunch, so you have to start there and have a really good relationship. And so kids would be like, Rick DeBerry, coach, I ain't gonna hold you. I didn't do nothing. I didn't do nothing right now. Awesome. I'm not going to get you hurt. You're going to do this conditioning session, but I have to hold you out on certain things so you don't get hurt. I can't speed up this process. Yes, we can do some extra conditioning, but remember, there's venom. The difference between medicine and poison is dosage and timing, right? So let's be really smart. I can't just give you a bunch of extra work because we want to try to make you tired. So being able to have those relationships with kids, because when they transfer, if they're leaving this organization and they're coming over here, legally, this organization doesn't have to allow them to train. And if they have left the portal and they signed with another team, like legally, it's illegal for them to lift at this organization. So now you have a kid that's detrained for however long it takes for them to leave that place, go with you. Maybe they're training on their own at a facility, but oftentimes they're not because it's like, oh, well, I'll be ready when I get there. So now you have an athlete that's left this program and maybe hasn't trained for 4 to 6 weeks. And now you have to get them ready because the sport coach wants to. It's like, well, sorry, sport coach, they're physically not able to. And that's why you have to have a really good intake system to be able to say, and that's why we had the conditioning test that we used where I could go to the sport coach and say, hey, this athlete that you brought in, that's awesome. It's not a pass-fail test. It's this athlete's conditioning is at 75% of his peers. And he's a skill player and has a worse conditioning score than the average offensive lineman. That speaks volumes versus he failed the test.
Yeah. To throw a percent out, I'm going to say, because I don't ever want to say all, but it's high. I'm going to say 95% of all public sector strength coaches are future private sector strength coaches, but they don't know it yet. Right. And to go back on the first thing that we were talking about, the not putting the athlete first and the communication being the biggest issue that you're seeing through that sector, we need to talk more about that because they are future private sector coaches. They're all going to say they're not, but they are. You are now. Yep. They all, I don't want to say all, but I kind of do. I kind of do want to say all because every public sector coach I know at one point had to do private sector work, either because they were between jobs or whatnot. It's like Buddy Morris might be the one that he's pretty much been there the whole time, but he was in a private sector and hated it for like 3 years. And he'll ask him about that one time. He'll rant about that for 2 good hours on that one. But outside of that, pretty much all of them end up in there. In the private sector, if your communication's not on point, it's not athlete first, you're going to be finding another job.
And that's where, because sometimes those private sector coaches will get hamstrung by just being the assistants to whoever. Like if I was just only trying to be Coach Moyen's assistant and not learning how to communicate with athletes, and if I was just trying to parrot whatever he said instead of like actually learning how to develop athletes, how to do the things that we're trying to do and becoming a skilled craftsman versus like, oh, I'm just going to parrot whatever he says. Like, no, even when you're working, wherever you're working, learn the things that the person who's in charge is doing. What do you like? What do you not like? Kind of have a journal of what I would do when I'm in charge, because eventually you will be in charge. Maybe you do take over there. But something a good friend of mine, Moses Cabrera, said, he's now with UNC. He's been Bill Belichick's strength coach ever since he took over and was with the Patriots. He's like, I took over for Harold. He goes, And if I was going to get fired, I'm getting fired for being me. I'm not getting fired for trying to be somebody that I'm not. So they have to learn and they have to understand, hey, I might be taking over this program at this gym that I'm working at, but don't get fired trying to mock and parrot whatever that person did. Go be your own person and understand that, yeah, you're learning skills that other people in the college public world aren't learning. You're learning how to balance a book, which can help you when you have to run a budget in the private setting. You're learning how to communicate with moms and dads. That's the same way they have to communicate with a sport coach or administrators. Like, the problems are the same. It's just the names of the people. That's what changes.
Now, in your portal, do you have webinars and stuff that are dealing with these exact topics? The communication side, yes. I guess you could kind of see sales and influence, because it is that.
Yep.
You have to have influence over who you're speaking to, how to speak to people.
Yep.
Because all those qualities I can see why it's a problem, right? Because I don't want to say just the pandemic, because it was happening before that.
Yeah.
People being cooped up and digitized so much that they don't know how to communicate. And I can see how that can expand if you get into one of these programs, because then the communication's kind of delegated to other people and they can be authoritarian. The athletes, they kind of have to do what you say they're going to do.
Correct.
They're not going to play.
Yeah. And like the sport, like if you don't, you even see it in the private setting versus public setting in terms of when an athlete's late. Like, if an athlete's late in the team setting, it's like, you're an idiot. You don't go push this, go do whatever. Versus like, if they show up late to a training program, it's like, all right, you either have already established with them that you have me for this hour and I have another athlete after this, and you went from 60 minutes to now you have 55 minutes or hey, no, I work with you and we'll get these 60 minutes in, versus a guy that I just had on the podcast, Dr. Tyler Lesher. He was an athletic trainer for a bunch of college. The last place he was at was UCLA men's basketball. And during his coming up, he was in the G League and he worked with this guy named Caleb Martin, who plays basketball for the Dallas Mavericks. And he was able to leave the Heat, went to the Mavericks, and Tyler called him and was like, hey man, like now's I will go be your guy. And so yes, if the athlete's going to be late or change his time, that's Tyler's one income stream. When he wants to train, he goes and trains him. So you have to understand the differences in being able to communicate with, hey, when a schedule does change, or how you handle those conflicts, because in the same way that it's a problem, if you're an assistant strength coach and you're back to my example at Iowa, when I was one of 5, I wasn't actually writing programs. We'd sit down at a staff table. Doyle would be like, hey, before we met, hey guys, I wrote the off-season plan. We're going to review it. Let me know your thoughts. And so behind closed doors, I could be like, hey, we need it. We should change this. We should add this exercise. That's how I had my influence on the program. But if you don't actually do that and you just kind of sit back and, oh, that sounds good, coach, you're losing that skill. You're not learning how to program. And then you don't have the ability. You're not talking with sport coaches. You're not talking with athletic trainers, because when you sit in that head guy role, you sit and you're actually making the real decisions, and you're talking with ATs about this return to play process and this sport coach. It's not, hey, here's what I think should happen. It's, this is what's going to happen because based off of my level of expertise, and the buck stops with you. And you got to be real fucking comfortable with that, because it's going from playing with your own money to playing with the house money. And you need to learn how to do that. And I got really, really lucky that Drew Wilson did that for me when I was at the University of Maryland. I worked for Drew for 2 years, University of Maryland, College Park, where Stephon Diggs, his first 2 years, the kid that he played for the Pats, but he kind of made his name with the Vikings. I was Drew's assistant. In addition to, there was only 3 of us. I was the number 3 guy, but I was also the head strength coach for men's and women's cross country. And I thought Drew was kind of like punishing me or like giving me extra work. But in reality, I was keeping skin in the game. I had to communicate with a sport coach. I had to communicate with an athletic trainer, read an injury report, talk with them about things, talk with athletes where it was my program, not what I think. And so any strength coach listening to this, if you're in that position where you're an assistant with a big team and you have those, that's not a diss on you. Use it. If you don't have it, find ways to program for the intramural sports so you can learn how to develop those qualities. Because if you don't use it, you lose it. Like, you should be doing those things because, like you said, maybe you do get let go and now you don't know how to program, talk to anybody because you just knew how to set up things and coach the group and yell and do a lat pull down when that's what the head guy wanted you to do.
I just want to take a moment to let you know about our crew. What our crew is, it allows the show to stay independent, and it's the reason why the podcast is still here now. The podcast is free to listen to, but it's not free to produce. It keeps going because of the sales through Elite FTS, our show sponsors, but more importantly, our crew members. The reason I love this is for many reasons, is it keeps the show independent. So I can pick who I want to speak to. I can pick what topics I want to speak to, and I don't have to be accountable to anybody. I just go off what the crew members want and what the audience wants, and I don't have to deal with all the other bullcrap that's associated with the podcast world. In return, what you get with the crew is ad-free episodes that are released a day ahead of time. You get access to our Discord community, which has AMAs, like 60 ebooks. We try to put a new ebook out every single month. Access to our coaching community with form checks, training Q&As. It also gives you invitations to our training retreats that are out here in the gym once or twice a year. 76% of all the people that joined in 2022 are still members now. Right now, you can either go month to month or get 2 months free with an annual plan. Just look for the link in the description, look at the QR code, or search elitefts.com crew and join today. It means a lot. So when you're working with that high endurance athlete, cross country, being a really good example is how does your programming of the strength and conditioning change once they have an established training age?
With them, they were very novice athletes, and it was just getting them to not be afraid of the weight room in the same way that we'd be afraid of going on a hard 5K, not jog, but like an actual run, and getting them comfortable in there, getting them to understand, like, sure, maybe you're doing a goblet squat with them at first. Maybe you're doing you're just introducing it. You're putting your toe into the water, but you help them understand. And if you go and we talk about Yosef's books, the Ultimate Athlete Concept stuff, the Soviet stuff, which was, they were talking about Olympic weightlifters and track and field athletes. Hey, look, these athletes would lift. You start talking about the science behind it. Hey, now we're going to be having your tendons and your muscles more robust to handle the impact of all the ground reaction forces from running. This is going to help you run faster because your muscles can contract harder. It's going to keep you doing the thing that you want to do. Okay, you have to understand your method and the principle. The principle is we want good, strong lower body legs. You are a long, great cross-country runner and you're terrified of a back squat. Okay, do you want a front squat? Okay, no, you don't want a front squat. How about a goblet squat? Okay, I don't mind that. Or I like a trap bar deadlift. Understand what your principle is, lower body strength. What's the method that I go and achieve it? And that's the communication piece of working with your coach. But if you don't have that good fundamental progression regression that is or isn't being taught at 90% of colleges when you're in undergrad, well, now you're setting that athlete up for failure. And any strength coach listening to this that's been a head guy for a while, they get these interns that don't understand how to progress and regress exercises.
So how do you train the higher intensity ranges in those athletes that don't have the technical structure and ability to actually be able to keep form and strain in those 90% plus ranges, or you just don't?
You don't. You really don't. You start off with your 1x20 training program, your super
PSEs.
Yeah. You're doing the 1x20, and then you're getting your capillarization, you're getting the connective tissue strengthening by doing those. And now you're they're kind of learning, like, okay, hey, I was supposed to do this for 20. I picked a weight that was way too light because I did 24 reps. Now they're kind of learning how to strain. Okay, I got 18. It was a little too heavy. Let me see if I can do that same way. And it's that education process. And as we know from reading the Soviet text or any of the other texts, your first, 4 to 6 weeks is all neural adaptation anyways. Mm-hmm. So let's just keep it all very vanilla anyways. Now they're starting to learn you. Hey, okay, coach gets me. He's not making me do this maximal stuff, but those last 4 to 5 reps are a little bit harder when they know they're at 16 and they have to dig a little deeper to get that 20th rep. So that's where you started. And okay, hey, let's do some linear periodization. Let's kind of figure out what your 1 rep max might be. All right, we think it's this. All right, we're going to do some sets of 6 and we're going to work up. And now we can mathematically be like, all right, you did 80% for 6. Let's, 1 RM estimate. This is your 1 RM. Hey, next time you come, and you just slowly, you bump it over time. It's the boiling water for the lobster over time. Oh, hey, at the end of a 6-week phase, we think this is your 1 RM here. Cool. Now we either double down on that or we do a new movement because like you said earlier, it's all just information that we're feeding the body.
Well, it's in the adaptation. The reason I put that question out there was a kind of a loaded question because some would find some way that they could do a max effort type of thing, albeit a quarter squat with fuckery attached, to be able to do that. And their argument would be their ability, they're developing that ability to be able to strain and that max effort to where, my counter to that is they still don't know how to do the exercise for shit. And they have, so if we look at this from adaptations, you have like 3 years of adaptations that you can do before you even have to go there.
Correct.
Like you can't, and that was part of what your thesis kind of said. Like if you're going to take all this and then you're going to put it here, then where the hell are you going to go when you do need that?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I don't think people grasp that. I really don't. And in the private sector, I think it's gotten a little bit better. What was going on for years, and I call it program hopping. Like they 5-3-1 or something else. They just instead of trying to like look at that program and say, what is the methodology that developed that program? Like, why did Jim come up with this? Or if it's Swede with the cube, why did he come up with that? What are the principles at play? Because they play into all of those, right? And are the coaches today looking for those principles, or are they hopping from school program? Like this is done at Iowa, this is done at Ohio State, which would be like the 5-3-1 of the public sector. Are they doing that? Or are they trying to figure out what builds this?
Again, it's the worst answer, but it does depend because there are some coaches that are literally, they leave one school, they get hired somewhere else, they change the logo on the piece of paper that they had, and they just run that exact same program. And I have a friend of mine who's a head athletic trainer. He was the head guy that Kyle Cherry and I worked together at Towson. Amazing relationship. And now you have some strength coaches coming in and they're just literally copy paste what you did at a prior organization instead of being like, well, first of all, as you and I understand, the program you have is dictated, number 1, on the facility you have. Number 2, it's the athletes. And so there are coaches copying and pasting. There are other coaches that will then look at the constraints. These are typically the coaches that have gone to good undergrad, graduate schools, or they've been educated in good internships, or they're Strength Coach Network members, or they have learned these things where they know that the program is dedicated based on those things. And then they start to build their program, not because, hey, this is what we did at Iowa. Well, why did we do those things at Iowa? The kids that we had, we could push them to that certain level. We had a certain level of kid versus, well, you're not getting that high training age athlete. You can't be doing that. You don't have a room that can, I'll never forget. At the end of my internship, this kid had a GA and he's like, oh, I got it. He's talking about how to program the jammers. It's like, dude, you don't have jammers. You have to understand that was a vertical overhead Olympic lift derivative of the jerk. Just go and program jerks behind the neck, front neck, whatever you want to do. It was getting heavy load overhead. Do a dumbbell, like whatever you want to do. Understand the principle. Don't just be like, well, that's what they did at Ohio State. Well, cool. What's the principle behind it instead of just, oh, we're doing this, right?
I got a question for you. With the copy and paste kind of coaching, do you think you're able to tell when a coach goes from organization to organization, their program is being copied and pasted? Like, do you think they actually can get away with it for longevity, or does it eventually starts to come back to bite them? Like, obviously, if the team isn't performing well, but like, do you think there's a certain lifespan of a copy and paste coach?
There's a lifespan, but typically there'll be the coaches that maybe like bounce around with a sport coach. So the lifespan never runs out because it might get bored after 3 years because the athletes don't adapt anymore. But because that sport coach moves on, now the strength coach moves on, and you can't actually see your long-term athletic development. Like, so that's where it doesn't always happen. Or your athletes, because you don't have, that's the good end. Hey, it never pans out because we can never see, sure, maybe they did or didn't, they moved on. The converse of it is that team never achieves those level of success where, hey, I left Ohio State, Iowa, I copied and pasted, I did this exact same thing. Well, now the team sucked and you guys just lost your job after 3 years. It's like, well, if you ran this Ohio State program or whatever program that this is why we won, well, clearly it's not the reason why you won because you just didn't win. You guys all lost your job.
I can see one benefit of doing that, and that would be if you're taking the template with you and then adjusting the variables of the template to fit your population, then that would be building upon the 3 or 4 years that you worked under that template.
Yes.
Instead of just starting something. But that's not what's happening.
No.
Right? So the question I have is, I'm going to date myself here because I'm going back to a book by Kramer and Fleck called Designing Resistance Training Programs, which is still a human kinetics book, but before it was a red book before it became the bigger book. And whenever they redo a book, they make it worse. It sucks, right? Like Bumpa's book, the old theory and methodology by Tudor Bumpa is amazing. The human kinetics sucks. I don't know what happened, when it went from one to the other one. But so I'm only saying this because I don't know if in the more recent version, if they have the needs analysis that's put in there, so it's the question I have is, are the certifying bodies that are out there now covering a basic needs analysis? As you said, you got your athletes, you have the weight room, you have the sport demands, you have all these variables that go into a needs analysis, which is the first, your skill. These are all like big pillars that need to be answered before you even start working with anybody. Is this
yeah, the needs analysis is for sure, especially talked about, and some of the different governing bodies of like, hey, start here, work like, and look at the sport that you're doing. But it's not taught like, hey, the weight room in your program is going to be based off of the room that you're actually working in. But there will be some like, hey, look at the needs analysis of these athletes. What are some common injuries for them?
Yeah.
But that's sometimes where it stops, where it's like, hey, okay, what are the needs analysis? What are the injuries? Let's make sure we're doing some corrective exercises and addressing those areas. But in terms of like the true depth of, hey, let's look at what are the biomotor qualities, because you still see some people that are like, hey, a 300-yard shuttle or a 110 is the conditioning test for football. And it's like, well, that's not the real needs analysis. I know that there might be prior research on it, but like, just because it was done in the past, I mean, America used to be part of Britain. Women didn't have rights. Like, just because that's how it used to be doesn't mean that we can evolve and do things better.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a moment because we do read the comments, and one of them that keeps popping up more frequently than not is, I can't believe this video doesn't get more views. Take a minute to subscribe, leave a comment, and share. It really does help. Well, I think the first step is the coach has to ask, what do I know how to teach and what do I not know how to teach?
And what do the athletes need?
Yes, right? And that way they're not teaching shit they don't know how to teach. Right? They may have to learn how to do it, but if they don't know how to teach the Olympic lifts, then they probably shouldn't be in the program.
Unless the sport coach makes them. But
well, yes. I mean, I'm removing that variable, and now they may need to learn those, right? So that's definitely part of that. But if they're really good at, coaching these one things, I don't see that spoken about as much as I think that it should, as well as the communication, as you said. And I think that they're so basic that we all just think everybody knows it.
True.
Right. And so it doesn't become part of the main conversation. It's one of the things because I've had some YouTube influencers come out that make educational videos for training, and one of them told me one time that, it's really important to make sure that people know that when they grab a dumbbell, they should grab it in the center of the dumbbell. Right. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding? You know what I'm saying? But We assume that
Oh.
people know that.
Oh yeah.
They probably don't, right? So you got to distill it way down. And a lot of the times I think we get too far removed from if somebody just walked in that knows nothing about anything, they walk in here, they're going to be like, what the fuck? Like what, there's 125, there's 200 bars. Like why you got so many, you know, they don't know. And to break that down into the basic components where communication's probably the same way.
The thing that I thought of as you were talking right there is the fact that, you know, the needs analysis might be talked about like, okay, this sport needs this skill.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily also talked about like, okay, well, how do you develop that skill in this portion of the year when you have 35 to 40 minutes twice a week, and that's what you have? How are you developing that quality of this sport needs this demand? You are only in the weight room here. How can you make sure that you're touching these qualities over the course of an in-season? How can you make sure that you're preparing the athletes for acceleration, max velocity work, explosive change in direction work during a week if they're not getting it at practice? Because we have to teach the sport coach that, hey, athletes, if they don't use it, they lose it. We want to make sure they're touching on some max velocity work. This is how you can appropriately dose it in during your warm-ups. So they might understand, okay, these are the needs of the athlete, but then it's like, well now what do? I know, how can I plug and play it in my given situation?
What was the motivation? That's probably not the right word. What was the gap that you saw that made you want to lean into the strength coaching network?
Hope exactly that. When you have interns that come and work with you and they can kind of talk to you about, I understand that this athlete should be lifting this weight, or they should be understanding this is what Proliferan's chart says, but they don't understand how to communicate with an athlete. They don't understand how to communicate with a sport coach. They don't understand that, yes, in the weight room is secondary to what happens on the court in the field. And they also aren't learning from coaches that are actually doing the thing. So they're going to school and they're learning from a professor that has this degree in kinesiology, but has never lifted weight. They've never done a super maximal lift, but they're the ones teaching them. So for Strength Coach Network to be learning from, if I want to learn about how to coach, field hockey athletes, I should learn from somebody that's done it. Well, the person that's presented on training field hockey athletes is working with the German national team men's field hockey team and has won a bronze Olympic medal. That's probably a good person to be like. So we were able to get experts in each domain to talk about a presentation, to talk about a webinar, to educate these coaches so then they can go and further learn, hey, this is what this coach who works with the German national team said. I want to then investigate things from them rather than just hearing this general education knowledge from our professors in college.
Why was it? I see it as kind of like an escape route, so was there part of you wanted to get out of the public sector to free up time?
No, I didn't want to. I loved it. I did not want to, like, when I got let go, I was shocked. Like that was complete news to me. I got let go during spring break week because the head football coach wanted his own guy. Like that wasn't
welcome to the public.
Yeah, but like but I was told, my wife and I, we left Iowa because I was told you don't work for the head football coach. You work for the university. That's why you have other teams to train. And that's why we left. So again, shame on us for thinking like, no, the head football coach didn't get his contract renewed in December or November. New head football coach came in December. The offensive coordinators and position coaches were gone. I had been working in a full off season with the football team. And then during spring break, I was notified that, hey, I keep working with all the other teams that I've worked with, keep covering for my other the other strength coaches, but you're not allowed to, don't talk to the football players. You're not allowed to be in the weight room when the football team's lifting. You can't, don't contact them. Sure, keep training the pro day guys that have graduated, but I was not the new head football coach's guy. So I was completely caught off guard. My wife and I had a really good life out there. We were happy where we were. I loved being a part of it. Kyle and I had a great return to play process. Yes, there were some people working there that was difficult to do, but I would have kept working I love working with those athletes. It was just, I was not his guy.
You're in the high school sector now, right?
I'm working in the high school setting and private setting. So I'm helping out my friend Greg, who's the head strength coach at Centennial, helping him out remotely and in person a little bit. But then I'm mainly in the private setting, working with athletes that go to that school, that go to other high schools, and other athletes that, like, there's a kid that goes to Nevada High School. It's 30 minutes away from me, and helping him and his family in the recruiting process and helping him now go to a Division I football team. Like, that was a big deal for them.
What are the differences that you see at the high school level compared to where you were?
I see coaches still trying to do things that they don't.
The athletes.
With the athletes particularly, they're undertrained and they think they need more advanced things than they really do. But that's what college athletes thought too. Like I said, the names and faces change, but the problems are the same. The athletes still think like you had to combat social media and, oh, what about this crazy exercise? You had to deal with that at the college. You have to deal with it in the high school setting. And luckily I haven't really had to deal with it with the athletes I work with in the private setting now. In the high school setting, you're typically dealing with more strength coaches that don't have as much support. Like, because high school has now become what like college was 20 years ago. So we talked about Division III coaches didn't have a staff or as one person. Like, Greg was by himself with 80 football players, and the head football coach didn't understand that that's just absurd. Like, one coach, 80 athletes. Oh, why can't everybody? Like, that's not safe. That's not smart. So that's what's happening. Or strength coaches only have 35 minutes to train athletes 3 days a week. Like, there's limited where schools are kind of like on the fence of, hey, how much am I going to commit? Because some strength coaches I talk to, they can train their athletes during the day because the school district cares about it, and they're going to give them 45 minutes 5 days a week to train them. Some of them have 30 minutes in the middle of the day. Some of them have an hour before or an hour after school, but it's limited because there's the one weight room and it's just them. So
how do you run a weight room if it's just you and 30 athletes?
30 athletes, that's no big, like that's smooth sailing. Like, now, well, how big's my weight room? If I got a rack of, 8, if I have 8 racks, I'll break them up and I probably have at least 3 to 4 athletes per rack. I'll make sure that I'm warming them up. If I'm warming them up at the weight room, because we're not doing speed work first, let's look at what we're going to do in the lift. And then let's find ways, if we're going to do an upper body emphasis day, some of the best ways that I've done, like, I'll just put mini bands on the ground, some plates on the ground. Hey, we're doing external rotation, band pull aparts, scat pull-ups, and, bent over rows with the 45-pound plate. If I have 4 athletes to a rack, I got those 4 implements on the ground. You're doing one of those 4 movements. If you're not doing one of those, you're wrong. And now, okay, I've got, 8 racks. I've got dumbbells over here. Let's make sure that I've got, again, 4 movements or 3 movements, and you're either benching or spotting, or you're over here doing this dumbbell movement or this mobility or torso movement, and you're playing traffic cop, and you're keeping everybody organized on what they're doing. This is the same whether it's college, high school, professional, private setting, tactical. They don't always have as much equipment. Nowadays, they're getting more and more of it. In the early days, they didn't. But you're just playing traffic cop of, hey, do I have 2 barbells at the rack? Here, we can do bench press paired with barbell bent over row. I can't do that if I don't have 2 barbells at the rack. So let me figure out what my weight room constraints are, what things I'm trying to get done, and then that's how you can reverse engineer your training session.
Well, I see that across a lot of all the high school coaches I know. It's a circuit, right?
Yeah. Basically,
that they're running, and it's not optimal, right? So if we want to get into optimal, that's where things get all shady. But it keeps the kids from screwing off.
Correct.
Right? Where if you have one and they're resting and they're screwing off. So because you kind of joked earlier about the whole optimal thing. You can have the optimal, but then it's going to become very suboptimal and worse optimal than what you're currently doing because of that, right? Or the time it's going to be able to take to get through everything, or you're not going to be able to get through everything. So you have to compromise.
Yep.
Which it should be strength and compromise, not strength and conditioning, right? Because when you do look at, and I think that's where a lot of this disillusion happens, because you can look at how Charlie trained X sprinter. Well, he did this. He was working with 4 fucking people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, he can do all this individualization and so forth. You're working with 50.
Well, the same thing happens with, and Cal Dietz is a strength coach for Minnesota hockey, and he's also done stuff with USA Hockey. I am not taking any shots at Cal. What he's done a ton of great things. He has a facility where he can do his triphasic stuff, and he has the bands from and he can do all the oscillatory stuff because his weight room is set up for that. If interns that leave there and don't understand, I can only do that type of training with these type of athletes that are, when you go to Minnesota hockey, you're going there to get put in the pipeline to go play in the Olympics and to go play in the NHL. So if you go and intern for him, but then now you're going and working at a Division III school that doesn't get that high level, strong athlete that hockey has been important to mom and dad, he's been training for a while. Oscillatory dumbbell bench is not exactly what that athlete needs, nor do you have the facility to do things that same exact way. So that's where you just really have to understand the facility that you have and who you have when you're writing your programs.
So with Strength Coach Network, what was an oh shit moment? Because you're going from working for institutions to now basically you're running it, working for yourself, right? So now you're an entrepreneur, business owner, so forth. It's different. Way different.
Yeah.
So what was the first oh shit moment?
Probably October of 2023 when it was now it was public. So I got the head football coach moved on from me in March. I kept working at Towson so I worked with the track and field throwers until nationals was done. So June 1st. And we had Keir and I, the guy that I bought the company from, in March, after I had been, let go, I was like, hey, okay, this can be the succession plan. At that point, I was already the general manager of Strength Coach Network. I was doing everything else except actually owning it. He fell out of love with strength and conditioning, and it was kind of a natural, hey, you're doing everything else. You might as well just take this on. But even at that, he was still I was still getting paid from him a salary to work for him, to do things. But once we got all the infrastructure in place and okay, now it's October, I paid the down payment on the loan. I'm paying you to own this company. Now the payment gateway goes through me and it's oh shit, now the problems it's on me. Sure, I can ask him for advice, how to fix the things, but the problems are now on me. There's no longer, I can reach out to JJ. I can reach out to Fernando for all the, no. I have to, okay, that's not working. Well, why isn't the payment gateway working? Oh, the payment gateway is not working because it's still set to his. Okay, hey, let's figure this out. Shit, is my mortgage going to clear this month? So that's when it happened. But shout out to Kier for all of that, because he was never the guy. He was always, he'll figure it out. He understood. JJ's hey, he's got to take over this. He's make a video for him, show him how to do it. He'll figure it out. He never handheld me during any of the processes of things that I was doing. And so there was a bunch of there was the different levels of progression. Hey, you did this, now this, you did this, do this. Okay, it's maybe a little bit bigger of a step, but for sure, October 1st of 2023, when it's wait a minute, this isn't we had everything in plan. It's not working. Oh, fix it, figure it out, go that way.
Wasn't that basically what every day is? Fix it.
Now it is. Yeah. But I had the, baptism by fire in that first moment of okay, cool. Calm down, figure it. What's the problem? Okay, cool. Find ways to figure it out. Oh, talk with the company that handles our CRM. Talk about why the website's like this. Okay, figure out how you got to learn it, understand how to fix it, go fix the problem. All right, keep plugging along.
Yeah, and then the next one comes.
Correct. But you've built the ability to, okay, I fixed that problem. Okay, cool. Now I can fix and tinker this, learn how to fix things in the back end, fix things in the, in the dark. And now I can continue to, go forward.
So you go from being predominantly in the strength and conditioning field to now kind of being in an e-commerce field.
Yeah, totally. And I was not aware, when I first did it, I didn't know that's what I was doing. Really, I was I'm going to keep being a strength coach. And now I just get to be a strength coach to everybody. I didn't understand. And I'm, the way I kind of say it is I'm in year 3 of an MBA program without being in an MBA program, right? It's the school of hard knocks of okay, you want to learn how to run a business. Now I've been running a business. It's been 2 successful years. We're in year 3 and continuing to go about it that way.
So when you look at leadership, right? Because this is another really interesting topic, because a lot of coaches, right, and military people will write books on leadership,
Yeah.
right? But they're working in environments that are kind of authoritarian, right? When you get into the private sector and it's a business, a lot of those principles, they really don't work. Actually, they don't work at all. It doesn't work that way, right? And and you're right in that kind of like that transition type of thing to where you can read those things and be like, oh, that sounds great on paper, but that shit ain't going to work here. Right. So how are you navigating that? Because it's weird, right? Because that's where all that leadership shit comes from. And I'm like, you realize your athletes don't really have a fucking choice.
No.
You know, the cadets kind of got to do what the fuck you got to say. You know, and I made an analogy one time that if it was a customer service person and they're sitting at the chair, but then right behind them, I got 2 other people sitting in 2 other chairs that want that job really fucking bad. They're just waiting for that person to go to the bathroom so they can go and work to be able to show how much they deserve to be in that spot. Right. And then the third person is the same way. Yeah. It's like 3 deep. That would be a football team. Right. So that leadership dynamic is a lot fucking different than the one person that's sitting there by themselves with there's the backups to not provide that. It's different type of motivation and leadership. And then each individual is different, right? It's you can have a culture kinda, but it's all kind of based upon each individual as well. So it's how you navigate all that.
I mean, I've been really lucky to be able to draw on my well of experiences. Like I was the high school, it's funny being a PhD, like having a PhD and going through all the extra schooling and, you know, reading as much as I do now. In high school, I brag, like, I'm never going to read a book again. Like I thought it was cool to not read. Right. And then I get to Harvard and part of our internship curriculum is we had to read X number of books, watch X number of videos. And that kind of started my love for I was reading The Energy Bus from John Gordon and I couldn't put it down. And so I started to, and then we got super competitive about reading at Iowa because, like I said, we had a lot of free time and it was like, oh, Dave, you're going to read 1 book a month? You're fucking soft. I'm going to read 2. And it just became this hyper competitive. We got to the point where it was like, I'm going to read a book on speed reading so I can learn how to speed read and read more books than you. And so I had this amassed wealth of leadership books that I had read and then kept reading when I went to Towson and would listen to audiobooks and listen to podcasts. And, you know, I learned about Discipline Equals Freedom from Jocko in 2014 when we read Extreme Ownership as a staff. And then I got to see extreme ownership not applied by some of the people that I worked with. And then we read a book called The Slight Edge of Simple Daily Disciplines Repeated Over Time. And I had that wealth of knowledge just kind of ingrained in me. And I was also, you know, I'm the first generation of Limas born here in America. So my dad is an immigrant. He came over to the United States as the island, the Azores outside of Portugal is where he's from. And so my grandfather and my grandmother moved their entire family when my dad was like 10 over here to America, and they up and changed their life. They moved from where they were for a better opportunity for their children. So like I have that same spirit of like, hey, work hard, keep your mouth shut, just keep chipping away. The thing will get done. You're doing the right thing. This is what, like, you can do this hard thing. You can keep doing it. It's not fun. It's not comfortable, but you have a wealth, a bank. I think David Goggins said it before. He's like, you have your cookie jar that you can reach into and be like, I've done hard shit. I can keep doing these hard things and figuring out these problems. I didn't know how to handle online school when I went and did my PhD. Day one, I was like, you can ask my wife. I was like, I'm quitting. This is like, what? She's like, shut up. Like, you're having a good, like, you're fine. Like, you'll figure it out, right? You bite the elephant one bite at a time. Being the first time none of us are ever qualified to do the thing that we do until we do it. You're never qualified to be a dad. Sure, in theory, women are like, he's a pretty good uncle. I think I could, he could be a good mate. And it's just like, I had that wealth of knowledge and I had my dad worked as a store manager it's called Stop and Shop from Massachusetts. It's, Hy-Vee, Fairway, whatever you want to call it. But that kind of blue collar, we're going to get the job done, like leave it better than you found it and just don't make excuses, get the job done.
One of the book hacks I'll put out there, because I used to read a ton of the business books and, all the things that people would recommend. And I'm going to date myself again. There's something called executive book summaries, right? So they put out summaries of all the books because you'll find after you read, 10 of the books, kind of like you mentioned. It's like, all right, I get it. I don't need the stories. Just tell me the most important damn thing. I don't need to hear the 5 antidotes that go with, do hard shit. Like, I get it. Like, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
And I started subscribing to these executive book summaries back when they would send them in binders with, paper. And it's like 3 or 4 pages, and it gives you an executive summary of everything that's in the book. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I can rip through like 14 books. So I would have kicked everybody's ass, right? Because I could have just went in the meeting and say, hey, look, here it all is.
Now, we used to watch, now fast forward that, and there would be YouTube videos of like, it would be a illustrative executive summary, like a 5-minute video.
Yes.
And we would start watching those and be like, oh, you read the book? Well, I did that. Like, I did this while reading this book, and I listened to this podcast. Like,
yeah. But even what I find, even with those things now, because they're really repetitive, they really are, is you forget a lot, so I think it's important for everybody to continue their education, for that. And plus you're doing the podcast as well, so you're speaking to a lot of different people, which helps as well, because there's a lot of underlying principles in strength and conditioning and business and communication and all these things that are not really complicated. They're just hard to do consistently over a period of time. And the easier thing is to go down the rabbit hole of fascia and what happens if you're cutting, versus this. And those are fun. They're deep rabbit holes that you can go down. But in the 6 hours or 8 hours that you spend doing that, you still have to fucking file the state taxes that need to be done, that could have been done had you not gone down this rabbit hole, which really doesn't mean shit to your life as far as it goes, but it pulls you away from the basics. And I think that with the strength and conditioning, that's why we see that drift away from basic communication skills and the drift away from just fundamentals, of strength and conditioning, which you don't want to keep repeating it, because you keep repeating it, then nobody's going to like, comment, share, subscribe, so that doesn't help. The stupid shit drives the algorithm, but it doesn't drive customers, which is 2 entirely different things.
Yep.
But it doesn't help people, when they get in.
No.
So I'm curious, what are the most popular webinars, topics, videos, whatever you want to call them, on your channel?
Like the one that comes to mind is definitely going to be the one on hamstring injuries, because hamstring strains is common across all sports. And so this is a presentation about, hey, there was 5, not catastrophic in the fact that they never came back, but like legit grade 2 tears, and how this coach was able to rehab these athletes and help them come back onto the field again. So then that way it's, hey, these are the principles that I learned. These are some of the exercises that I learned. This is the speed work and the conditioning that I did. Understand the principle and learn how to figure out and apply it in your setting.
In a broad sense, what are the takeaways from that?
Well, first of all, that he copy and pasted what he did with other athletes. He also worked with a different group of athletes that were in a different nationality, and they didn't understand percent-based efforted. Everything they did was high speed, high effort. And so there was the language barrier, and he couldn't educate them on moderate effort versus maximal effort, and everything they did was maximal. So the training days that he had planned wasn't what's actually happening to the athletes. And then when he was trying to explain to them the different foot positions of when they're sprinting, they didn't understand. They just meant it was, foot on the ground versus where exactly they were running. So then he had to learn how to communicate their style with them, and then being able to better appropriately dose exercises that will help them use the level of effort that they should, instead of always doing maximal. So having more body weight reps, more body weight exercises, and then scaling the reps. So that way, instead of having them doing a ton of reps because it was, or a ton of effort because it was really heavy and they only knew how to go high speed, they could control it with their exercises. Also being able how to program within the coaches in their practice. So if coach wanted to practice super hard that day, he had to learn how to pull back, because their training sessions would be before practice versus after practice. So you can do more with athletes when they're done with practice versus beforehand, not doing as much posterior chain work before practice versus after practice. So that was some of the big broad takeaways with that.
So it sounds like what he did is he went and looked at what the root cause was.
He audited himself.
Yes.
And that's what that webinar was. Like, hey, here's an audit of what went wrong. Here's what we did. And in the next year, we only had one injury.
Yes. That's the way it should be done, right? Because the other way it would be done is here's what I had them do to recover from the injury. And then they recover from the injury and then go back and re-injure it again.
Then we have another really good webinar. Again, like the return to play stuff where it gets kind of messy. So we had a strength coach where she shared how she helped a Olympic wrestler, so a contact athlete, rehab an ACL injury with the orthopedic surgeon, with the physical therapist, and then being able to compete again for Canada and being able to understand like, hey, a lot of the protocols for conditioning stuff is for an athlete that is going to be running. But if you have a grappler, a wrestler, a foot, like they don't necessarily have to run as much. So what are some new protocols for conditioning work that follow the principles of, increasing volume, increasing intensity, but I'm talking about a wrestler that has to handle contact to their knee. Then same thing, Andy Ryland has a presentation on contact prep. So for now it's not as big of a deal because coaches have been educated on it, but before, for us, when you're in your spring ball getting ready for football, you're never actually hitting another person. You're lifting weights, but Andy, who worked for USA Football and had a background in playing rugby, he played at Penn State, he put presentations together for coaches on like, hey, this is how you can, grab a wrist, learn how to grapple and fight another human being, learn how to pummel and hit each other, shoulder to shoulder, chest to chest. So that way you're preparing your body for contact, going on your hands and knees, fighting sideways, fighting forward, how to then get your neck position in your head and doing it in a safe way where now we're preparing the athletes for what's going to happen in spring ball, or even if you're playing basketball, if you're playing lacrosses, you can dose these things in and then being able to do it in a safe way.
How are coaches implementing large language models into their work today? Or are they not?
I don't know how they are. If they're using it to write programs, I'd be really, really apprehensive because, if they're going to throw it into like, I think the same way if they copied and pasted and took a random just 531 program or a West Side whatever program or anybody else just copy and paste it and put it with their athletes. Like you shouldn't be doing that. Sure, you can Google and say, okay, I want to write I need a program for these group of athletes, but you're the coach for a reason. And you should be the one that's writing the program and understanding the sporting demands and understanding why you might need eccentrics or isometrics or concentrics or dynamic reversal. Like you should be the master of the domain. And like you said, if I try to speed it up by reading the executive summary, I haven't actually learned and absorbed the information. And now I can't do the thing because I'm not truly a master. If you're just copying and pasting it, or you're having your large language model, ChatGPT, Claude, write your program, well, what do you then do? You're going to get exposed real fast when athletes come in from practice or before practice. Let's use that example from Kier. He's got guys lifting after practice. If they're coming in and they have these injuries, well, if you used Claude or whatever to write your program, you don't understand why you have that exercise, where you have it. Now you can't progress or regress it because you don't know what to do. Now you're exposed. Now your athletes don't have the stress adaptation that they need, and they continue to get hurt out on the field. You're getting fired, and eventually somebody, an administrator, is going to audit you and say, hey, why did you put this program here when you did? Why did you write these exercises? Oh, well, I did it because of this, versus, well, what's the principle based on the governing bodies, the scientific literature, and based off of your experience as a coach and the information you've gathered during your career?
Well, the reason I'm asking is because the higher level strength coaches are early adapters when it comes to technology, kind of across the board, right?
So here's how they're starting to use it is they'll have it try to, it's because they're chasing the unicorn of injury prevention. So they'll send it large databases of like, hey, here's all of our athletes' force plate data. This is their Fly 10 sprint metrics. This is their wellness score. correlate based off of this eccentric rate of force development, this impulse, this speed, and this related soreness sleep, who would you, large language model, flag as an injury, and who and
Sure.
why?
So data analytics.
So that would be the way of like aggregating data to say, hey, go into like, it's almost a more fancier, if you plug in HRV. Okay, Dave's HRV says this. His isometric mid-thigh pull last time was this. He's got this hamstring test. He reported this. Okay, based off of all of that, this system is flagging you. So it's almost like a more advanced monitoring tool would be the
faster
way.
Too.
Correct.
Way faster.
That would be the way that coaches are doing it. I would err coaches on the side of, in the same way that we talked at the very beginning of this, you can't only lean on that, because you also want to have a really good memory of understanding, like, okay, yeah, like you could then have a good conversation with the AI. Hey, you flagged Dave. Okay, why? Okay, I flagged Dave because he had an asymmetry of 17% between his right and left leg on his isometric mid-thigh pull. His eccentric rate of force development was down 12% from the last time he did it, and his fly 10 was down this. Okay, cool. Now I can extrapolate it instead of just saying, hey, Dave, you're flagged. Well, for what? Why, right? And now you can have a better conversation and be like, okay, and you're like, you know what, Justin, I hurt my hamstring in practice, but I'm the backup and I don't want the starter to come get his job back. So I haven't said anything to anybody and I can keep pushing through. And now you can try to give coaches that, you can give the athlete an intervention. So in terms of, they're not using it to write programs, they're using it to help analyze the mass amount of data that's getting collected from the technology.
No, that I can see that, to where that would have been the responsibility of assistants, right? And interns, which hopefully can now free them up to have more face time with the athletes to learn the communication skills that they're already lacking in. Were there any other topics you wanted to go over that I didn't bring up?
No, in terms of me, like there's just things to try to learn from like, what are things that strength coaches need to because strength coaches love hearing about, West Side Barbell, hearing about places like this. Like, what are the things that coaches don't understand or do wrong in the strength and conditioning room when they try to apply or say that they're doing certain things?
You mean if it's like trying to emulate what a powerlifter is doing? Or
not even just but like they'll say, hey, we're doing a max effort day in the weight room. We're doing dynamic effort day in the weight room. And they're trying to draw on principles, but they're misapplying it, or essentially what should they hear from somebody that's lived it as long as you have?
Well, if we're going to let's just stay on the max effort. If we're going to take that, then they have to understand what's the adaptation that's trying to be achieved by that. Right. So if that adaptation is to be able to teach a lifter the ability to strain, does that even matter for the athlete that you're working with would be the first question, right? Because should they be maxing out? Like, why are they maxing out? So that would be the first thing. But when you're dealing with looking at what higher level strength athletes are doing, it's strongman, or it doesn't really matter what it is, the piece that gets missed, and they all do it, even if they don't know they do it. There's undulating periodization that's happening throughout everything that they do, right? So here's max effort work. We want to do the max effort work. Well, all right. So how did that happen in my own real life? Well, we'd come in, we didn't even know what we were going to do, right? We know what we're not going to do. We're not going to do what was last week. And then we're not going to do anything that's going to fuck us up if it's on Monday for Friday's training session or Wednesday. So now we're going to have a discussion about what we can do, which isn't going to create too much fatigue that we can recover from to be able to do the next training days that we need to do. Then we figure out what that's going to be. And then as we're warming up, we're making decisions. The intent is, we're going to work up to a max single. That may pivot. This don't feel right? It's going to be a triple. This don't feel right if it's, 2 plates in or whatever it is. I'm not doing this. I'm doing something else. There's all these micro decisions that are made, before this even happens. So out of the whole group, maybe 60% are actually maxing out, and it may not actually be a max, right? So if we're going for a 5-pound PR, what we're really looking to do is just strain.
Yeah.
right? So if I hit that 5-pound PR, but there's more left, why in the fuck am I going to do another one? Right? I already did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
If I get close to where that is and say it's 85, 88, 90%, and I know we can't, because using anything under like a dime for a jump was a cardinal sin, but it was also a good teaching lesson. Because if I got to put a 5 and a 2 on, then maybe that's a rep I shouldn't have done. Maybe I got everything I needed out of it on the one before that. So it really wasn't 100%. It was 98%, 95%, or whatever it's going to be. But all those decisions that were made for somebody that's a competitive power lifter, right? That doesn't have, goes back to the first question, is this a correspondence that you even need to have? You need to get stronger. So lifting maximal weights is going to make you stronger. But is there really a difference in the adaptation between 90% and 100%? Let's really think about that. Is there, right? So is it really necessary, or is it ego? Now in a power lifters, you got to build ego too,
Yeah.
to be able to have that. So there's the first thing, right? Is that's all being just fucked up. Like just go max out. And then, if they're looking at what we're doing, we're changing it every week because we're really fucking efficient at doing it. We wouldn't be able to do it a second week and be able to get better at it. If they are not really efficient at doing it because they haven't spent 15 years doing good mornings and pin pulls and all this other stuff, they probably need to stay with the same movement for a longer period of time. 1 week just to get acclimated to the movement. So if I bring in, because now I still squat like an idiot. So if I bring in a new bar, right, and I'm using that bar for this first week of the phase, I'm just feeling weight out because I can't use a straight bar anymore. So all the specialty bars work different. Like a Mars bar wants to throw me on my ass. I need a week just to get reacclimated to what to do with this.
Yeah.
Do I pull it down? Do I push it up? What do I need to do?
Yep.
How do I need to brace? That's week 1. Week 2 is like feeling like where could this really be? Where's the striking range? Week 3 would be the hard one. I'm advanced at doing this shit. And there's a 3-week phase right there.
Yes.
Right now, if it's somebody that it may be a 5-week, there's the other thing they're fucking up because they're taking that and extrapolating it to, you need to change it every single week, where you're dealing with people that we know what the fuck we're doing. You spend 15 years doing a certain movement. So there's that. I can keep going. I can give a million reasons, why all that kind of falls into there. And then if we take this out longer, there was a phasic approach, to where, Louis would notoriously say there's no phases we can peak within 3. There were fucking phases. He wrote about them. There's a circumax phase. There's a phase after you do a meet where you're really high for risk of injury. So you're going to back things down a little bit just because of that. Because most injuries that would happen post meet. People are trying to hit what they thought they could do in the meet. They're, the anabolics aren't going to be there. Water retention is going to drop. A lot of the other variables are going to happen. So it's a conditioning phase. Let's just call it what it is. So the conditioning phase, then there's 3-week waves, which are all these, mesocycles that fall in there, each one having a different intent, which now we're talking block periodization, but no, it's conjugate. You see what I'm saying? Yes. So it's, people will look at this stuff and they'll see conjugate, like let's raise all abilities at the same time. Well, isn't that what the fuck block does too? You know what I'm saying? You just specialize in one a little bit more than the other. Yeah. We were doing the same thing. It was just called something else, to be able to do that. And fucking the basic Western linear model is block. That's what I'm saying. This is what is frustrating to me when it comes to that programming thing, is you got to look at what the underlying adaptations are, what the variables are, and what plays into all programs. Now you take that strength athlete, and now you got somebody that's got to do a sport. What's got to give? Because you can't take all that, because we're on the borderline of minimal effective dose, maximal effective dose, and being able to recover between each one. And we're riding that line.
Oh yeah.
Really fucking close, which you have to. Yep. Now you're going to take that and then go run and do your sport practice. You fucking kidding me? Like something's got to come out. Yeah. It just makes sense. Like if we were to all at that time, okay, we're going to go play flag football, we're all blowing hamstrings. right? Because you're not conditioned for that. And I kind of get, where it all comes from, but it also, people don't look deep enough. They want just do this, do this, do this. And I've always said at a basic level, all training's physical, mental, and technical, right? And it's Dr. Dwayne Johnson will call it the biopsychosocial model, and it's, if you take a Venn diagram of all three of those where they all intersect, that's where the high performance is. But all three matter, right? The technical matters, but is the squat proficiency that we needed the same squat proficiency that your athletes need? No, that's stupid. It's just not going to happen. It's got to be good enough. It's got to be good enough. Right. And I think that's one of the lost variables with programming is across the board, everything that needs to be good enough, not optimal, not maximal, good enough. So that Venn diagram maximizes that good enough right there in the middle where it's excellent. Right. Because you can't be great, 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 and then have that diagram actually come together. It can't happen. They're just going to be all different things that are thrown. That's what we see. When it all comes together, it comes down to being good enough. But oh my God, that's evil because you have to be hard. You have to train hard. It's like, that is fucking hard.
Right.
Be good enough at all these different motor abilities. Go ahead, do it. That's why genetic freaks are the ones that advance the highest in sport, because they don't have to work that much in one of those attributes because they're genetically gifted with that attribute. So that's good enough no matter what they do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where if you're not that person, and I think everybody has genetic attributes, that they can kind of lean on, but they need to focus on what those are, the weaker ones, and not overemphasize the one that they are already good enough on. That would be another mistake that kind of falls in there. So that's my question on that one.
Yeah, no, and
Okay.
that's exactly why, we filmed the stuff about the power complex, and I've kind of gotten, there's people talk, I present on this topic a lot, and it's because team sport athletes, there are some strength coaches that, hey, you have to clean, or listen, you just have to be good enough at rate of force development that it's such a highly technical movement. Let's let it be a tool in our toolbox. If you have athletes that can do it, great, let them do it. Otherwise, do other things, find other modalities to help athletes improve.
Well, let's stay on that one because your PhD was kind of around that, right?
Yes.
All right. So your knowledge of that's going to be deeper than what mine is. So if we're talking rate of force development and we're talking early childhood development, where different motor abilities are going to be not maximized, but ingrained better at different ages. So once they become post-puberty, how much can we really increase their rate of force development?
Yeah, that's where you're going to say, how are you improving it? How are you looking at it?
Mm-hmm.
With a jump on a force plate, you'll be able to see, is the rate of force development improving over time? Sure, each training session, there might be dips and peaks and valleys, and you look at their body weight, if it increases or not, but you can start to see an athlete improve their rate of force development via a vertical jump, if that's going to be the way that you want to measure it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always going to come down to, what's your way of measuring it? Is it going to be isometric mid-thigh pull? Is it going to be a vertical jump? Is it going to be how fast they're accelerating a bar on a squat or a deadlift? You pick the metric, and you will be able to see athletes improve over time. We were able to see it in colleges when you have good programmed periodization over time, over an athlete's 4-year, 5-year career. They're still getting stronger. They're still being more powerful. So you could infer inferential statistics that they were getting better over time.
Now, was that statistically significant?
And that's where research will try to say, it's not statistically significant that an athlete went from, a rate of force development of these number of newtons to these number of newtons, but what's the psychological benefit of an athlete to know that, hey, I'm now moving the same weight faster. I am a faster, bigger, stronger athlete. I can now go out and perform on the field better because I psychologically feel better.
Well, where I'm going with this is, if let's say it can't be and it's not statistically significant, we do know what happens if it lowers, right? If their rate of force development drops, they're not playing. right?
If they're still really good at their sport and they can still achieve outside of it. But yes, they need to be able to increase their rate of force development over time and be able to be better than the people behind them.
Sure. And then what's the first thing that goes on an athlete as they get older?
Yeah, that power production. Exactly.
So if that's where I'm going with this, to where because it kind of goes back to the critics of dynamic work, which I get that, and they're probably right on most occasions with that. But if all it does is maintain that development that got that person to that level, for a longer period of time, they're going to play longer.
Correct.
The longer they can play, the more times they have to display their maximal potential.
Exactly.
Right? Because that's what sport is. Like, say in powerlifting, the longer somebody can last, at a certain point, they're not going to get stronger. They're just going to put their best lifts together in a better way. Right?
Yeah.
So that means they got to go in healthier, to be able to display. They have the strength, but they're not displaying it to the maximal efficiency.
Yep.
Right? You can get there. I don't want to say quick, but everybody can get there pretty quick. And then you're talking about marginal strength increases. This is just how this shit works. We all know this. Nobody wants to say it, right? It's just how it works.
Yep.
But when you can put that all together on one day, or you can put that athlete on the field healthier to display their abilities to their maximum potential, which isn't always the case because a football player's fucked up most of the time.
Yep.
Something's always wrong.
Yep.
Imagine if they're out of 14 games, half of them they play and nothing's fucked up. Everything's firing right. Well, they're better than almost every other person that's playing.
And that's where a sport coach will say too, like, hey, I know said athlete isn't at 100%, but them at 80% is better than our backups. And that's especially true for any of our strength coaches that are working at the lower levels where, talent's spread out now even more because it's not just the Ohio States, the Alabamas, the Georgias that have talent. So even there, the difference between your Jeremiah Smith and any of these people, there's a big difference between your ones and your twos. So if your ones can be at 85, 90%, that's better than, that's your whole goal, is to have your best players available so that they're there for a reason. The coaches have identified them as being the best to be able to play.
Yeah. And if they go to 70%, there's a problem.
And so if you can keep that ability to produce force, so instead of having to do a power clean or a hang power clean, if you break it up into doing an RDL or a deadlift and do it with some intent, with some speed on it, you do a weighted jump to be able to get the violent triple extension, and then you do an altitude landing to replace the ground reaction forces from catching a clean, you can now break that into its constituent parts. The athlete who's not technically proficient at catching a clean, because I don't need my 3 technique to be great at catching a clean. I need my 3 technique to make sure that guard doesn't climb to the Mike linebacker and the linebacker can make a tackle. I don't need my power lifter to be great at Olympic weightlifting. I want to tap into this type 2 motor unit or muscle fibers. I want to get that rate coding, the muscle synchronization, and I can do that with a really heavy deadlift, a triple extension jump, and an altitude landing.
Mm-hmm. Were there other things that you had?
No.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that was like, and from there, now your imagination, like we film the extra content on it, but your imagination can go from there. How do I want to do the deadlift, the RDL? What kind of jump do I want to do? How do I want to land? You as the coach now play with it within your framework, but you can break down those constituent parts and maybe just like you can add a little bit of longevity, because Patrick Mahomes right now is coming back from an injury. He's not like Bobby and Ryan. They're not going to be judged by how well Patrick can do anything in the weight room. It's, can he go back to being himself on the field? Jason Tatum for the Celtics. It's never going to be, what do they do in the weight room? We are generalists, and our job is to keep the athletes on the field doing the thing that they have to do.
Yeah. It comes down to that, even if it's going at a high school level. If somebody doesn't have the ability to play past high school, you can help them make their senior year their best.
And there's let them enjoy it. Let them love it.
How?
By making the weight room fun. And by fun, it doesn't mean it's all rainbow and sunshine. You still do really hard things, and you put them in positions of success where if they don't have the ability to do certain exercises, for most of the time, we've been able to make accommodations based off of whatever it is, a wrist, a back, or, hey, you can't do this, you do this. With the Olympic lifts, it's typically not what happens. With the clean, it's like, oh, you got to learn how to do it. Otherwise, and for some reason, that's the movement that team sport strength coaches get judged off of. If you can teach a clean or not, you're a good strength coach, and you can allow them to enjoy their playing experience by remembering that what we do here in the weight room is we're generalists. So let's keep the main thing, playing the sport. You can lift heavy weight. You can move it fast. You can jump really high. You can do violent stuff in the weight room. Let's just make sure it's applicable to the athletes. And you can even do it really, really well by scaling and progressing and regressing the exercises with any of those different things that you would do.
Would you say that and I'm going to say all high school strength coaches should teach their athletes how to do a clean? And the reason I'm asking this, if they are good enough to make it to the next level, because it seems like once you go to that next level, once you get into college, they're cleaning, right? So is it better for them to go in knowing how, or to go in just strong?
They should go. They should learn it, and so that's why like a good high school strength coach should make sure he's doing that towards the end. Like when an athlete's getting ready to leave and go to college, you should be teaching them how to do the thing so they can go and be technically proficient and help your athletes out. But I would make you could almost make the case that if you don't have a ton of kids that are going to graduate and they're not going to clean. And like, okay, once the athlete's done playing, hey, the senior is done in football, he's done with all his sports, he still wants to lift. Hey, let's get you ready to go to college. Now I have the time to break down your clean. I can do all the things to help you get really technically proficient. So when you go to college, my job is to help you be successful. So that's how you can do it.
Yeah.
But in terms of, do you have to teach every single athlete it? I would say no. But if, like, again, it's not the end of the world. Like you can't, it's not. I used to say, no, they don't have to. It's stupid. No, if you want to, cool. If you don't, I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah. Well, I think if they're moving to the next level, I like what you just said there. You use that last phase, to make it so they're going to be more successful when they get, and easier on the coach.
Exactly.
When they get there.
And like for me in the private setting, like that's my job. Like I have kids that they're done. They don't want to lift with their high school team anymore because maybe they didn't have a qualified strength coach, and they're going to go and clean. So yeah, I need to make sure that they know, like, that's our job. We need to make sure that you're able to do the thing that you're asked to do. Let me make sure that you're able to do that.
What's the best way people can find you?
Strength Coach. You can just search Strength Coach Network on any of the Googles that we're on Instagram.
Any of the Googles.
Google, any of the search engines. Sorry. So our page is strengthcoachnetwork.com. We're on Instagram. We're on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of them.
All right. Any final thoughts?
I am just thankful to be here. This has been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. This was great. We're done.